pursuit of greatness begins at first light. And never.
A couple weeks ago, the top teams in all of iRacing roared through the French countryside for the Majors 24. It was a time filled with major battles and major safety cars. Today brings a different type of race for the Major Series at this track. It is the Le Mans 2.4, live on GSRC. Hello everyone and welcome to the 7th race of the Major Series European Regions Pro Split season, the Le Mans 2.4, live on the Global Sim Racing channel. I'm Justin Prince, alongside me in the booth tonight is Nick Smeg with Christian Challoner as well. Behind the scenes our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Before we get into today's action, let's talk about this racetrack with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Le Mans. When you talk about legendary circuits, this is a place that stands among the most famous in the world. Part permanent road course, part temporary street circuit, it traipses through the countryside just south of the city where it gets its namesake. Its size matches its reputation as well, clocking it at 8.5 miles, which equates to roughly 13.5 kilometers. However, when you take into account that it's split by only 33 turns, the frighteningly fast nature of this circuit becomes clear. Most of the corners have been added over the century of history it's experienced, but many have become renowned and respected. The two turns at the opposite ends of the massively long Mulsanne Straight play equally important roles. Tertre Rouge requires a great exit in order to not lose massive amounts of time, while Mulsanne Corner takes bravery and precision in order to brake as late as possible and keep opponents from passing you on the way in. There's also hair-raising moments like the tricky entry to Indianapolis, or the close walls along the bridge section in the Porsche curves. To win here, drivers will need a very low downforce setup, a good sense of strategy, and heaps of bravery. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is the crown jewel of endurance racing, which many drivers dream of someday winning and many fans flock to witness in person. Once you've driven the track here on iRacing, it's easy to see why.
That's a look at your GSRC track guide for today's circuit. Now, Nick, today brings some special challenges for today with this track. A massive circuit with multiple different turns, but long straightaways.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I mean, what more can you say about the Circuit de Le Mans here in France? Hosts, of course, the 24 Hours of Le Mans every year, and just last weekend, we saw the Majors 24 here. So today they've got a little bit of a different challenge. Not team racing today. They are going to be by themselves here, but over the course of 33 turns, 2.4 hours, they'll be out on track, 145 minutes. It is one of the most accommodating tracks in the world for lap traffic and for multi-class racing. So what does that produce? It produces a lot of pure racing, a lot of pure battling within your own class. And I think with these guys being the best of the best, we're going to see some good ones today.
The circuit it will serve is going to be very interesting for some of the battles today. It's been some intriguing battles, though, when it comes to the championships entering today's round for the Major Series in its European Pro Splits. Tim Claessens comes in today with a 2-point advantage over Handsome Pete. Dallas Pataska is 17 points back in third. Sam Harper, Eric Mickey round out the top 5 entering today's round. For the Sportsman drivers, meanwhile, it's Adam Fasciponti who leads the standings with 98 points on the season. Sean Brown, Mike Gaunt, Eric Freak, along with Brendan Cloge round out the top 5. 22 points to separation amongst those drivers. Our Legends drivers, meanwhile, are led by Richie Hearn entering today's round. 1-point advantage over David Baker, with Ray Partridge, Bob Beltrami, and Claude Belval rounding out the top 5 in the Legends standings. For the Legends Sport drivers as well, it is Colin Ward entering today with the advantage. 8 points over Jan Brony, with Peter Dolmayer 9 points behind. Rolf Dietrich Hotho with 12 points behind in 4th. Simon Thorms rounds out the top 5 in the Legend Sport drivers. And when it comes to the teams, Grizzly TFR has been very dominant once more this season, Christian. They're 1-2 in the standings.
Yeah, they are. The Daytona team has a 9-point lead over the Le Mans team. They've been close really the entire season, but the Bombshell Racing team's actually pretty close as well. They're only 20 back now, so they're actually kind of closing that down a little bit. The Dog Bear Europe team is 96 back, and Team Mad is kind of falling away just a little bit back there in 5th. But the same can't be said really for Team Sportsman. It's a lot more spread apart there, especially when we're talking about the gap between 1st and 2nd. Missed Apex F1 Podcast Team 1 has a 126-point lead on Hanson Brothers Racing, with HW Racing 131 back from the lead in 3rd. The Grizzly TFR Daytona Junior team is not having as good a season as its sister teams in the pro standings, but they're back there in 4th, 159 back. And then Missed Apex F1 Podcast Team B returns to the top 5 and is 209 points back from the lead.
Let's look at your standings entering today's action here in the French countryside. As Nick, today is a bit of a retro type of race when it comes to the cars for today's round as we take a look at your race details.
That's right, and that's what I'm really excited to see here. We've got the HPD back here on iRacing, the old LMP2 that they used here, the ARX-01. That is going to be our prototype division today, our top class here, and we've got a strong field of 13 drivers looking to win over in that overall series class. And then the secondary class here, the GT1s are back as well, the Corvettes and the Aston Martins. Those are so much fun to drive, so difficult here, especially on the long run. But then you've got the newcomers, the GT3s, the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars. A lot of fun there. We see a lot of professionals even struggle over in those machines. They're going to be running for 2.4 hours. Like I said, that's 145 minutes. Open setups, of course, here in the Major Series. And cautions they will not have to worry about today. Is going to be a 2.5-hour sprint to the finish.
It's going to be an intriguing race today for the next 2 hours and 25 plus minutes for what should be some entertaining action from the French countryside as qualifying is currently underway. It's down to the final 5 minutes of the session, in fact, as right now Riley Thompson leads all drivers in the session with a 3:31.895 in the HPDs. Dallas Pataska leads the GT1s, while Sam Harper leads the Porsches at the moment as we follow Loma Dawson Brock. And Christian, this track brings many challenges when it comes to qualifying as Dawson Brock moves up to 3rd on the board, in fact, where these drivers are going to be having to make sure they don't have any off tracks as well as try and carry the most speed they can around this circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the hardest things with Le Mans is really kind of just figuring out how much you can push the limits, because there is quite a lot of time to be gained by running right up to the edges of curbs and so on. But obviously, if you overstep just a little bit, you'll invalidate the lap, and can't have that in qualifying. And it is quite a long session, obviously 20 minutes, 4 laps. But because of where the cars are started from, essentially with a short kind of warm-up lap, what it tends to mean is that you sort of really only get 2 goes at it unless you're just going to do a 4-lap run, which I actually think is a viable strategy for GT1s. I'm not so sure it's a great idea for the Porsche Cup, and the HPD I'm a little bit unsure on. So the GT1 guys probably are going to be wanting to use more than 1 lap, but That car is quite tricky to drive, that's for sure. I mean, I've been having a blast driving it, but it's definitely not for everyone just because it is very old school.
Absolutely, as we follow on with Eric Mickey now as he completes his qualifying lap. Sam Harper has talked about leads this respective class. But Mickey coming across the stripe, that was now a 4:02.341. The times seem to be picking up in these classes for the end of the session, it should be worth noting for some of these competitors. The track temperature, 85 degrees Fahrenheit today, 80 degrees is the air temp for today's action. The wind's currently gusting at 10 miles an hour to the north. In-sim time is approximately 7:42 p.m. As you see some of the smoke kicking up from George Gruber's machine. Very sporty Corvette today as he invalidates his last time around.
Yeah, this is very easy to do, and quite a decent gap, I would say, at the front of GT1 right now. Dallas Pataska about 7/10 over Tim Clayson's back to second.
And the last of the drivers are coming across the stripe, and this will be the last competitor to take a time in this qualifying session. It's Trevor Bobrovsky, the final 2 minutes of qualifying. And Nick, when it comes to this circuit, what are some of the major challenges you feel these drivers will have? Especially knowing that in this section, it's so easy to potentially overshoot the corner and damage the race car.
Yeah, I think coming in with a mechanical mindset is the toughest thing here, as it looks like Bobrovsky not able to improve there on that time. But, you've got that long straightaway. You want to trim your car out as much as possible until you get down into the Dunlop chicane and the Ford chicane. And then, through the S's, through the more technical sections of this track, Indianapolis, Arnage, you're going to have to be very careful if you have trimmed that car out very much. So it just all depends on where you want to be quicker at on track, and kind of have to balance it out here.
George Gruber electing to take some extra time to practice this racetrack here. And your thoughts, Christian, on this facility, especially knowing the Mulsanne Straight is going to be carrying the most speed throughout the day today?
Well, with the GT1 cars, for sure, you can't really trim them out all that much without them kind of getting to the point where they're really unwieldy to drive. So I think everybody's kind of not maximum on downforce, but they're relatively high up. And the thing is, obviously the straights are so long, so if you can't break out of the draft, it's going to really come down to a strategy battle and trying to see what you can do. And I kind of like the race length, actually. I know obviously it's 2.4 hours because of the 10% deal, but it works out nicely in terms of how many strategy options it allows just across the classes. You see Gruber going around there at Mulsanne Corner. It's very, very easy to do. If you just kind of get it a little bit wrong and snatch the brake, you can either go straight on or you can lip it around like that. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what everybody does for strategy, because there are a lot of options available. Everybody isn't kind of at the point where they can sort of stretch out and equalize it on stints. Everybody's going to have to do a splash and dash of some kind.
Question is, who will take home the checkered flags today? We'll find out in just a few moments, as all the drivers are off the circuit for qualifying, and the track will now make its way into our qualifying session. We'll take the time to remind you, charity for today's event is Cure LGMD2I, to help support research to find a cure for limb, Girdle, muscular dystrophy, type 2I. To date, it has provided more than $650,000 to research programs that are working aggressively to establish a treatment for LGMD2I. For more information or to donate, go to curelgmd2i.com. With that, the drivers are now making their way towards the starting grid. Let's take a look at how they will start for today's action, with Riley Thompson leading the top class when it comes to speeds today over Isaac Snyder in qualifying. Separation 4/10 allows their separation. Dawson Brock starts in third today with Ryan Walker, in fourth position. Herod starts in fifth position. Dick Moore in the Sargent's place machine in sixth position. Judas Pateklis will start in seventh alongside Enter Sintis Galindo, Claude Belval, Colin Martzoff, Bob Beltrami, Tom Drelling, and Travis Henderson rounding out that respective class. That leads us into our GT1s, Nick, for today.
And what a field we've got over here. It's only 7 cars, but it is a strong showing of 7 cars. It's Dallas Pataska and your points leader coming into today, Tim Klassens on the front row. Row number 2 is going to be Kurt Crum and Ross Banfield. Ryan Mayer and Cordell Cologne going to be right behind him, and rounding out that field just by a couple of tenths is George Gruber.
Moving down into Porsche Cup, Eric Mickey takes the pole. But Sam Harper's pretty close behind, so pretty competitive field we have here. He's lining up in second. David Malmoritz is not too far back as well in third. Trevor Vavrowski in fourth. And that's the top 4 all within about 1.3 seconds, so that's going to be a tight fight. Joshua Wolf a little bit slower than I actually thought he was going to be. And then David Baker lining up last in class.
That's a look top to bottom at your running order. 26 drivers make it to the starting grid today for the Le Mans 2.4 as they start to separate the respective classes for their starts here today. Your keys to victory, Nick, for today.
Well, these drivers, a lot of them are coming straight off of the Majors 24 from last week. That was a test of endurance. Today, it's going to be more of a sprint race. But that being said, they can't make it too much of a sprint race because 2.5 hours is still going to be a long race for anything to happen.
Your keys, Christian?
I think it's a strategy battle, I really do. I think it's going to be hard to get out of the draft in every class. Obviously, there's a lot of HPDs out here relative to everybody else, but it does mean that traffic, for the most part, is going to be quite light, so everybody's got a lot of options available to them. Don't be surprised if we see people making some really early, aggressive pit stops to kind of take their splash and dash early.
Currently, these HPDs are making their way through the Porsche and Corvette curves on the way to the Ford chicanes to start things off for today. Of course, as is tradition here at this racetrack, the jets always fly above this facility and bring those colored patterns from above the skyline, the beautiful jet scenery here for today's action. And on that note, the drivers are all set to go for today's action here at the Circuit de la Sarre. Green flag is waving. We are underway. And Riley Thompson with not the best launch to start things off. Isaac Snyder able to keep it side by side as they head off into the Dunlop chicane. Snyder rips away the race lead with an aggressive move.
Down in the GT1s, they've got to wait till they get to the front stretch, and now it's Dallas Pataska from the outside on the loud pedal. Not a great start at all from Tim Klassens. He's going to be susceptible to losing second place here because Kurt Crum is storming in the 7 on the outside.
Seen a bit of a bobble there in the side-by-side for second position. They keep it side-by-side, in fact. The Dunlop chicane clear themselves single file as the GT3s, meanwhile, have already made their way to that same section. Eric Mickey off to a good start, Christian.
Yeah, Eric Mickey taking command of the class very early on, but there's just this sea of Grizzly TFR cars at the back of the line, and I got to think that they're going to work together when they get to the straightaways.
It's going to be very interesting once they get to the straightaway. Sam Harper, keep in mind, the reason he didn't get the pole in part, spun in qualifying. HPDs, meanwhile, they're all lined up astern as they make their way down the Mulsanne straight for the first time today. All of them trying to break that also important toe. The top 2 are already very close to one another. Dawson Brock keeping within range, 4th on back, losing about 5 car lengths for the first part of the chicanes down this straightaway. Oh, and one car already off.
Thompson.
Riley Thompson, the class leader, spins it out, or rather the class second place car ends up spinning it around. Ended up going a little bit too much to the right on the entry of the corner. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay again. This was your pole sitter, I should say, who was second in the class at the time when he went around.
Yeah, he had lost that spot to Snyder, and there you see, even before he gets into the chicane, he's already sideways. He had no hope to correct that thing.
Just kind of snatched on him quite quickly there, but he is still in the line of HPDs, so he should be able to make his way back forwards, and obviously didn't pick up any damage.
While behind them, Tim Klassen's able to jump on by Kurt Krum, and it's going to be very important to keep up with Dallas Pataska today. Dallas Pataska was lightning quick in practice. Times were 2 seconds quicker in practice compared to some of the errors for Pataska. As we take a look from Ross Banfield now as he tries to draft his way up into the battle for second position.
That was a great leapfrog move down into Mulsanne for Tim Klassen's around Kurt Krum. He had lost that spot, remember, right in the first turn, so he got that one back. It took him half a lap, and now they're going to have to be patient, work together here in the draft, and that's how they're going to chase down and keep in touch with Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, and that's really what it's going to come down to, is trying to at least stay attached to the class leader. And I think that's true for all the classes. Porsche Cup is pretty much the same deal. Eric Mickey actually got out to a decent lead, but he hasn't been able to break the draft there. And Dallas Pataska obviously not able to break the draft here either. But as you can see, everybody in Porsche Cup still bunched up very, very tightly. Sam Harper's still in second. There is a little bit of a gap opening up for Eric Mickey, but if he's to get out of the draft, he really needs to basically do a lot of damage to the Porsche curves this time by, and he's got to open that up a little bit further, and then he might be safe. There is another consideration with the Porsche Cup. In some areas of the track, it does get up onto the limiter when you're in the draft, so you kind of can't actually make any advancement, especially down towards the first chicane. So you got to keep that in mind, that it is a passing place if you're close enough, but obviously it's going to be hard to actually pull it off if you're running the exact same speed as the guy you're trying to pass and both of you are on the limit.
Absolutely. Gonna make things very interesting as you see Sam Harper try and close up. This is the section where he had a spin on his fourth lap in qualifying. As you see Grizzly TFR Brigade right on behind him as well. He's trying to keep within range, and you can tell he's actually trying to keep it conservative a little bit with the curbing, leaving a bit of space through the swing around to avoid the sausage curbing.
He comes into this race 4th place in the European Pro standings, like we mentioned earlier.
Oh, and a little bit of a send from behind. That's David Monerwich able to get the run, and Sam Harper had to let them on go. I believe he may have had a slowdown possibly. Either that or decide to let them on go. And this is a track where you might get the slowdown if you take more than half the curbing to the inside.
Yeah, I think he would have picked it up actually in the final chicane, because he was being very, very aggressive trying to clear it at the end of the first chicane.
It takes about 30 seconds to clear on by. Let's take a look one more time.
That looks okay on the left side curb, but that right side curb on the first part there, that's probably where he would have picked it up. He was quite far across the curb. And you can see actually didn't really look like he was trying to clear it immediately on the straightaway, so he might have picked it up after Dunlop and just elected to clear it right away, but it seemed like he was very, very aggressive trying to clear it, as though he was about to get a penalty if he didn't.
Meanwhile, in the HBDs, they're starting to really shuffle about in battle right now. This is currently going on for second position. Isaac Snyder has already broken the draft by more than 2 seconds to this group as we follow along with Ryan Walker, the RS Satellite Racing driver, in the midst of this train.
Ryan Walker had lost a spot on the opening lap, but looks like he's settled down nicely, got it right back. And now he's looking for even more.
A difficult place to pass though into the Porsche curves. You've got to be really committed to pull that one off, and definitely too far back there to try anything this time.
Yeah, in the Majors 24, it led to a lot of potential incidents in this section, remember, in the Porsche curbs, especially during the nighttime, when drivers try to make their way through traffic in this section. But the thing is, Snyder continuing to grow the gap. It's now 2.5 seconds up the road already, as a big arc that time to try and enter the corner you've seen from Dawson Brock is up the road. Isaac Snyder continues to break away from this toe Christian.
Yeah, and I think he's on the verge of being safe, if not safe already. He unsurprisingly sets the fastest lap, and that's kind of the story actually throughout the classes. Dallas Pataska, Tim Clayson's picked up a slowdown, and that lost him quite a bit of time and actually opened up a gap there. Pataska might be able to get away there, and Sam Harper obviously had his slowdown, but Malnaritz has taken over second spot, and actually looks like he might have even taken over the lead here from Eric Mickey.
He absolutely did. Eric Mickey has now been shuffled back now on the pylon. As you see the teammates now trying to work together and battle it out a little bit. Borotsky providing pressure now backs it up. And slowdowns becoming a major storyline early on in this race. Tim Clanson's also had a slowdown in the past lap as well. So several drivers have been dealing with that throughout this event so far. Here, Nick.
Yeah, Classens fell all the way from second down to 6th place in class, and that's only a class with 7 cars, so he's got to be careful. He was able to quickly get back past George Gruber and Ryan Mayer back up to 4th place where we see him running now, but you know, the damage has been done. He is a good distance now behind Ross Banfield for a podium in that class.
Still very early on, though. That's the main thing. We're only a few minutes into the racing action and already mistakes starting to pile up. How tough is that to try and make sure you don't let them build up as drivers, as Kirk Crum gets shuffled to 3rd position, Ross Banfield to 2nd.
Yeah, if you're going to have an incident, now's the time you're going to want to have it, as Banfield using every inch of the track there at the exit of the corner. Look at this. That's going to allow Crum to get back at it. They're going to be side by side down the straightaway.
Kirk Crum has the better speed for now, though, as he clears on by Ross Banfield this time, as they approach the 2nd chicane down the Mulsanne straight. Already.
It's very easy. Sorry, JP. I was just going to say, it's very easy with these GT1 cars to miss the chicanes entirely. You don't have to brake too late. Say with a HPD, and maybe not so much with the Porsche Cup, but with the HPD especially, you can kind of dive in pretty deep, and yeah, you lose time, but what tends not to happen is what happens with the GT1s, which is that you miss it entirely, and then you can actually obviously loop the car around, or even worse, you can just end up going straight on, and you lose a lot of time when you lock up in the GT1s.
You see Banfield really nice on the brakes there. He was able to close the gap a little bit, and that's going to be ever so crucial throughout the course of this race today, because like you were saying, the draft is going to be so much, so important for these drivers today, and that's allowing Banfield to hang with him, and now the slingshot around him.
A nice move this time by Ross Banfield as they make their way towards Indianapolis and Arnage. Again, the 3rd circuit around the racetrack for these competitors at the moment already being completed. These drivers expected to make another 36 circuits around the Circuit de la Sarre here today. And as well, to turn back to you, Christian, on this, you mentioned some of the challenges with this car, with the retro stylings of it. How do you prepare and tweak your driving style to some of these cars for today as a result of that?
I think the biggest difference, especially with the GT classes that we have here, is that it's just a total recalibration of what the capability of the car is. So obviously the Porsche Cup, everybody's a bit more accustomed to. It's a little bit more popular than, say, the GT1s are on the service, and everybody's kind of used to that car and how little downforce it has comparative to a GT3 or say a GTE, especially, for example. So that one everybody kind of is aware of and whatnot, but I think the GT1s are they're an interesting time capsule because they really show the advancement of kind of those GT cars, and especially how good a modern GTE car is by comparison. Because a GTE car is just, it doesn't really have the same straight line as the GT1s did. The GT1s have got a ton of power, but in the aero sense, it's worlds apart. The GTEs through the Porsche curves, and especially under braking, are just so much more capable than the GT1 cars are. And I think especially in your kind of first couple of laps and whatnot, it takes a little bit to get used to that. And you just sort of have to accept that it's not as capable as the modern cars that you're used to, and that no matter how much you kind of play around with it, it's never going to be as good. And that was the hardest thing for me to adjust to, because I kind of went in and I was like, I'm going to get this to drive basically the same way as a GTE car does, and you kind of just can't do that. You have to accept some of the inherent handling characteristics to it.
All very critical as we see the Porsches all bunched up once more for the top three. Eric Mickey was able to close up back into this battle as they start their fourth circuit around the racetrack. And the thing is too here with these cars is going to be intriguing how these things fare out. Draft passes meanwhile are taking part in the HPDs, it should be worth noting.
Sounds like a problem for Dick Mueller. Might have been a slowdown penalty for the 83. There you see him right in front of, oh, he went off track, not a slowdown.
Yeah, locked up the brakes, in fact, yeah. Off the stand trap, rather, I should say. As Ryan Walker was able to take advantage of his Pateclas has also gained a position as a result of that mistake. Moves the Dog Bear Euro machine back to 6th position on the racetrack. Up in front of them, keep in mind, Dawson Brock already lost 5 seconds of the leader, but Handsome Pete is keeping the pressure up for a podium position.
A little bit surprised at Pete, actually, that he's kind of not challenging for the lead a bit more. In this kind of car, it tends to be the one that we've seen him do sort of the best, and obviously we saw in F3 and whatnot, he was very, very capable, so it's not the same, but you know, it's kind of the high downforce sort of aspect to it, and I thought he would be challenging a little bit more than he is. At the moment, Isaac Snyder is kind of running away with the class.
Now, Isaac Snyder continuing to turn the fastest laps in the race, 3:33.1 last time by. Riley Thompson, keep in mind, has been topping him on the speed charts, though, in the midst of the traffic after his mistake on the first lap. Thompson has beaten him in a couple cases by about a couple tenths per lap when he's gotten some clean track. So that's something to keep in mind as this race goes on. The downside for Thompson, he's 11 seconds behind Isaac Snyder is. Bit of a mistake for Monerwich once more as the teammates have been trying to bump draft and work together, try and pull away from Eric Mickey. They have not been willing to go side by side with one another. Mickey try and change the trend here and break them up. Yes, he'll try to. Taps the brakes a little bit, in fact, before he gets side by side fully.
Yeah, this is actually a passing spot for this car down towards Indianapolis. It's very, very risky, especially dangerous this early on in the race, but if they're like this kind of on the last lap or towards the end of the race, I would expect someone to try and run side by side through there. It's very difficult, but it can be done, and definitely is an opportunity to pass. You see Sam Harper, even after his slowdown, is kind of making his way back into the picture.
And the more they scrap, the more this helps Harper indeed. Yeah, Harper, 404.6 last time by. The lead car's 404.9s. And do you think this is going to work the way they're trying to get this done? Because it looks like at the very least the strategy is simple, Nick. They're utilizing one another to save fuel for that pit stop later on.
Yeah, I was actually just wondering the same thing. I was going to flip this question over to Christian. You know, we're watching Vavrovsky right underneath that rear wing of Manolowitz lap after lap here, and they're really not breaking away. Is this a track where in this GT3 Cup car, that's the best strategy to do that? Or when you have the runway that is the Mulsanne straightaway, do you want to kind of leapfrog them?
I think, to be honest, it's just a question that everybody knows here, that if you're in amongst the draft, that nobody's really going anywhere anyway. So what's realistically the difference between being at the front or being at the tail end of the train with over 2 hours to go? And see a big bobble right there on the exit, but good save. Now, in terms of how far these cars can go, looking at the international race, it looks like it's about 15 laps on fuel for the Porsche Cup, and I expect them to run 36 laps. So they're going to make one full pit stop and then a splash for 6 laps of fuel. And I think it's basically going to be that way no matter what you choose to do. I don't think you can really stretch out and manage to do the race only on one stop. So I think everybody's locked into a similar strategy. There is the possibility of actually kind of breaking out of the draft train by going off strategy, and I'm wondering if anybody's going to try that or if everybody's just content to try and stay together.
Yeah, that's going to be a tricky call, especially if you are Eric Mickey. Of course, you're right now by yourself with the 2 teammates from Grizzly TFR Le Mans. So Eric Mickey, really, all by himself, but he's got to hang with him, right? He's got no other choice, even though that's not his team. He's got to get up there and beat him if he wants to take Bombshell Racing to the front of the field.
Down the Molson straight once more. Kurt Crum, meanwhile, has been battling with Ross Banfield for a little while and has been having some difficulty with some of the braking zones with the 777 in front. You can tell just a little bit deeper on the brakes, that 7 machine compared to the car in front.
Yeah, Crum has been riding in line right behind Banfield here, and he hasn't quite been able to get around him. I just don't think he's found the right opportunity, and it sounds like Banfield might have a couple of connection issues, but it looks like he's been the last couple of laps.
Well, with the GT1s, there is a fuel consideration because at kind of full speed, they can only do 11 laps, but with a little bit of saving, they will make it out to 12. I haven't seen anybody manage 13. I'm sort of curious to see if it's possible, and if you're going to try and do something like that, this is sort of the position you want to be in, where you've got somebody ahead of you who's maintaining good pace, and that you can just sort of sit behind and try and save as much as possible. So I'm going to keep an eye on Kurt Crum and see just how far he's actually able to stretch out the fuel here.
I'm curious on that as well. As you can see just how old school even the dashboard is compared to some of the digital dashes that we see today, Christian, where it's just essentially for that the revs, you have that indicator on the right side, you have the gears on the left side, as well as the lights to indicate where you are on the revs. Very old school, that look, compared to some of the modern day cars.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you consider what's in even kind of the most sort of basic low-end race car these days, and it's a digital dash that's if not full color, it's at least one color and whatnot, and you're out here and you're talking about what was a factory like highest level GT car at the time, and the dash is essentially a couple of LEDs and 7-segment displays. It really does kind of show you how far just even small things like that have come in. Well, it's longer than 10 years now. I kind of always think of these cars as being 10 years old, but they're actually much older than that. We're talking way back to around about 2008, 2009, were kind of the ending of the GT1 era.
Absolutely incredible to think about how much technology has progressed over the years and how the driving styles have adapted to it as a result with the change in technologies and the grip. And a slowdown for the 69. Meanwhile, in the Porsches, we are hearing the 69 indicated on the radio, "Pass me to the right," just now, and that's dropped him to 3rd position. And now we'll give the draft to Sam Harper.
Yeah, this was such an innocent. I mean, this is kind of strange. He just ran wide, it looked like, in a turn, just barely.
And now this really helps Harper indeed, Christian, because before it was about 2 seconds the gap between the car in front. Now he's got some of the draft width, and there is a buffer of only about maybe a second or so to the top 2.
Yeah, I think for sure that this group of 4 is now kind of fully connected with one another. Obviously, there is a little bit of a gap there between 2nd and 3rd, but that's going to come down even on this first straightaway. It's a little bit surprising to me, honestly, that David Baker and Joshua Wolf have not been able to kind of stay with this group of 4, because we know they're capable drivers, and I think it kind of actually just speaks as to drivers such as Sam Harper and David Melneritz as to just how good they actually are. And I know that sounds a little bit surprising in terms of just how I said that, but what I'm meaning is we've seen drivers like Joshua Wolf in the series for a long time, and we know that they're very competitive. We've seen them win races, and now we've got a group of new drivers as we have a big incident
Bobrovsky sideways in the chicane.
And
Just got in too
Bobrovsky
deep.
way too deep and locked it up and right in front of the rest of the leaders. Mickey avoided, but his teammate hit him.
That is so gutting for TFR, for Grizzly TFR Le Mans, and especially knowing that the only reason Menarowitz was back there was because of a mistake that he had made with a slowdown penalty.
You see Bobrovsky going into the first game there. You see it just kind of just steps the rear out just a little bit. Ends up dead sideways to the track. Unfortunately, nowhere for the 69. And even Sam Harper getting into it a little bit. But decent amount of damage there to the front of Melnoritz's car.
See from the 69 machine. Just nowhere to go.
Yeah, he had to pick a side, and unfortunately he picked the inside, and the car was there and amongst the smoke cloud, and by the time he could see it, it was just definitely too late.
So that changes a lot now for how this class will shape out a little bit in the early stages. And by the way, they have been reached by the HPDs as well. So what a time for them to reach them as well. Eric Mickey is now pulled away by 3 seconds as a result of all the craziness. Sam Harper to second. Rich is to third. David H. Baker, we were just talking about him, is up to 4. Bobrovsky's already dropped behind Joshua Wolf. What an interesting first 20-plus minutes of this race, have to say, guys, so far.
Oh, and another TFR 911 has just spun off in the background. I'm not sure who it was.
I think it's
More
Bobrovsky.
incidents.
Bobrovsky, another issue. This time, Indianapolis.
Gotta wonder if he had any damage or if maybe he was just pushing too hard to get back at where he was. Yeah, just got sideways down in the apex of Indianapolis all by himself.
See, already having a let by some of the drivers. There is the incident right there.
Yeah, you see out of shape after the first part, and then just went around, just a whole pendulum effect on the rest of the corner there. And I think he definitely would have picked up damage in that contact. Obviously, the damage to the 69 nose piece is pretty significant, so he got in to the right rear, I believe, on the 10 car. Definitely
And while that's
doesn't look
happening,
like it's a full pace.
Looks like Kurt Crum is also taking second place in the GT1s.
So a bunch more swapping going on. This was, this time, Olsen. As you'll see the run being built up. Just quickly jetted out to the right, and then Banfield gave him the space as soon as they got side by side for the entry to the corner. Keep in mind, for the drivers involved with some of these incidents, there is a fast repair available for today's event, so there is that option, but it's going to take some time to be able to come down to the pit lane for that service. Meanwhile, take a look at Dawson Brock. Already the separation 9 seconds, and he's been caught by Riley Thompson. Thompson, a stellar recovery drive so far to get himself to this position. Now making his way around Eric Mickey. They both make their way side by side to the corner that time around him.
Yeah, Riley's not had the easiest climb back through the field. I've kind of been keeping an eye on him, and he's had some hard-fought battles, really, to get back up to where he is. So that's delayed his progress a little bit. I'd be interested to see just how fast he actually is when he clears Dawson Brock here, because I think it definitely is a when rather than an if.
Interesting way you phrased that there, indeed. But still, keep in mind, Thompson's been the quickest car on the racetrack with when he's had groupings such as this. The tough part's going to be, how does he get to Snyder here, Christian? Is the biggest question.
Well, that
Goes for the spot.
That I think is going to have to come down to raw pace, but it looks to me like maybe he's got a little bit more downforce on than the guys around him, because he's kind of just killing them in braking zones. But what he's not able to do really is he's not able to make easy passes, and that's kind of where he was struggling a little bit in battle through the midfield, because when everybody was in that line and he was obviously trying to pass cars who were also getting draft assistance, it looked like the only way for him to really do it was to just be really, really aggressive on the brakes. And here it looks like he's not too far down on top speed, because Dawson's not, it just ran up on the back of him. But I definitely think passing is a little bit harder for him than it is for some of his competitors, but I think it's helping him in terms of raw lap time around the rest of the lap.
See if he'll be able to use the raw pace to get up to Isaac Snyder. Gonna be a major question. We take a look back at Handsome Pete. Battling with Ryan Walker now for position.
Yeah, good job by Walker to stay in it. He's taken advantage of all of these shuffled positions ahead of him, and he's right in this thing, isn't he?
Impressive day for Ryan Walker. He's kept himself inside the top 5 most of the day, Christian.
Yeah, he's kind of had a relatively uneventful race so far, but as you say, obviously inside the top 5, and looks like he's working on maybe even a couple more positions here.
And I gotta say, I love these HPDs though, guys, because remember last year in this same event, it came down to the wire to determine the race winner for this respective class, all the way to the back end of one another, making their way through the final chicanes with traffic ahead. It was incredible, to say the very least, how this class closed things out for last year for the European split, for the pro side. It's been a different type of race today, but these cars bring out so intriguing racing action. Christian.
Yeah, but for sure. I mean, I think the HPD is probably, obviously, it was around for a long time as an official series car, that's for sure, but it was kind of a well-loved car, I think. I don't really know anybody who didn't like it, and I know everybody enjoyed racing it and whatnot, and there's been kind of calls made by the community for it to kind of come back in some form, just because people like it so much. And I mean, yeah, I have to agree. Every time that I've raced or driven the car, it's a lot of fun just to drive, and it's an experience that you're honestly probably never going to get again, because they've moved completely away from the idea of open-top prototype race cars. So this is kind of close to the end of that era. Obviously, again, sort of the end of the mid 2000s sort of thing, and it really is basically a cutting-edge LMP2 car, and of almost the fastest spec that there ever was at the time. So it's kind of like the GT1s are, where it's just an interesting time capsule, and it's kind of surprising to me actually to think that cars that were sort of new to the iRacing service are now almost considered historic race cars. But I definitely think that this is probably one of the best prototypes on here.
You're making us feel old here, Christian. Jeez.
I know. I was just thinking the other day, the C7 Daytona prototype, that arrived after I joined iRacing and has already been retired.
Wow.
That's how long we've all been around doing this for.
Absolutely incredible, to say the very least. As just noticed as well, you can see on the right side of that respective race car, you're following on board with some of the radio checks, reset fuel, various different button commands set up on that respective car as well. Walker taking this chance just to follow along and ride along for the time being in this train. These drivers 14 seconds behind your current race leader. They've lost touch, unfortunately for them, to Dawson Braun. Back over to the GT1s, Ross Banfield continuing to ride along with Kurt Crum.
Yeah, we watched Kurt Crum get around him, but Ross Banfield has not let him go. That being said, though, he's having to push harder and harder every lap to stay in this draft. So I think Kurt Crum definitely with the faster car right now. He's got more pace, but as they work their way towards that first pit stop, Banfield really thankful for the draft right now, I'm sure, to keep within touch.
allowing them the opportunity to continue to save. As the new fastest lap again set by Isaac Snyder at 3:32.421. Keep in mind that the track temperature has been decreasing, Christian, as the race has gone on. In sim time is already past 8:26 p.m. for our drivers. 77 degrees air temp. Those were a little bit higher at 80 degrees for the air temp, 85 for the track temp when we were in qualifying a little while ago.
Yeah, and I think that's actually going to help everybody out. Obviously, you're going to gain some more grip. You're going to gain a little bit more engine power as well with the temperature coming down. But the big thing it's going to help everybody with is just kind of trying to stretch out tires to the end of the race. Obviously, we saw an international GT1 and Porsche Cup drivers and even some HPDs trying to stretch the entire race. Banfield has repassed Kurt Crum.
He had indeed. Right down into Indianapolis they go, and Crum, I think that one caught him by surprise. He, like I said, he had the faster pace, it looked like, and well, Banfield has proved us wrong with that.
Early pit stop actually for David Malmoritz. He's just come in at the end of, I believe, his lap 8.
Yeah, he absolutely has selected coming early. You can see how bad the damage is on that 69 machine, so electing to come in and get the repairs done and missed a stop to boot. So how does this now play things out, Christian, for his strategy? He had been losing a fairly decent amount of time. Bobrovsky also electing to come in with him.
Well, I think the helpful thing for him, although Bobrovsky is quite significantly far behind, is that he will potentially have a partner to help draft back up with. He's actually taking tires, which is an interesting decision. I wasn't sure I was going to see that this race from the 911 Cups. But the big thing is, being off strategy for him now, he's obviously not going to be in that draft pack any longer, and he's going to have kind of a boring race until it gets to the very end, when it's all going to kind of sync back up and we're going to see exactly where he falls out. So he's going to lose the advantage of having people to draft with and kind of just naturally keep you at their pace and pulling you along kind of thing. But if he's able to run a good pace on his own, then there's the potential that he might actually cycle out ahead of some of that grouping and actually make a good gain from this.
The waiting game is going to be very critical here for the next hour and 50 minutes to see how things play out for the 69. Indeed, off and away. Bobrovsky also off and away behind him. Bobrovsky actually went with a 47.6 second stop compared to the 48.2 by the 69. So to reset your top three, it's Snyder, Thompson, Brock in the HPDs. It is GT1's Pataska, Banfield, Crum. It's Mickey, Harper, Baker leading the Porsches at the moment. It's been a very calm race so far, for the most part, outside of the slowdowns and that one major incident, I have to say, compared to last year where it was intense racing all the way to the very end, Nick.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see the attrition so far in the race. You always kind of assume that you'll have some issues on lap 1. We didn't really have too many, other than that Riley Thompson spin that he has, of course, recovered very nicely from. Now we see this nice little battle between Josh Wolf and David Baker. That gap closing between those teammates there. But yeah, it's interesting to see just how the attrition carries throughout the race. Obviously, the Porsches have been impacted most severely from that. So, who's to say really what happens for the next, 100 minutes of this thing, because might get a little bit, the strategy there. It, like we saw the early pit stops, that the attrition always mixes things up there.
Speaking of mixing things up, Ryan Walker has moved up to 4th position in this class now, the position where he started. The question is, will it stay that way down the Mulsanne straight, especially with the 83 machine now thinking about a move right behind him? Can he go for the 2-piece? Gets the 1 car, thinks about going side by side with Walker, backs it up instead. They slow things back down in this position battle. We'll see if Dick Moore's able to get the run back here to be able to now leapfrog himself in towards 4th position. Back towards where he's been much the race, electing this time to just stay behind Ryan Walker down the straight.
Let's see what Pete does here too, because he's going to get reeled in with this action.
Lance and Pete go back for the position. Already gets backed up a little bit from behind by about 4 or 5 car lengths to these two in front. If they try and reel back in Dawson Brock, they did pick up some ground last time by on Brock by 2/10. That's down to the brakes once more. The Team Mad Machine not able to close up the gap.
Ryan Walker doing a phenomenal job to keep Dick Mueller behind him right now. I thought for sure Mueller would be able to have the slipstream and be able to have the advantage, but under braking, Ryan Walker just really doing a great job with this HPD.
Very impressive from Walker. Known for his sim racing broadcasting skills as well. Good on the road courses when it comes to VRS satellite racing. And at this point, there's a chance they may get back up to Dawson Brock at the rate they're going, with Walker leading the charge here. If they continue to work together, they still are just at the very edge where they're at right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that might be a reason that Dick Mueller is sitting pretty right here, because he sees that they're closing into Dawson Brock, and he's saying, why get one position when I can be a little more patient and get 2 of them?
Indeed. Should be worth noting that George Gruber has taken an early pit stop on lap 10 to 11 for the GT1s, as Isaac Snyder makes his way down the line. The GT1s are in the midst now of their window. It was talked about on the raw pace, you may make it to about this range, but let's follow along with Isaac Snyder for the next lap, as we are in the 1 hour and 45 minute to go mark here for the Le Mans 2.4 for the Major Series. Oh, and Isaac Snyder just got into the 69 machine of David Monerwich. He has just hit him into the wall.
That is incredible.
This is just as the GT1 started pitting. And what did I say? This is exactly what we've seen in the Majors 24, where drivers took it side by side in the section and caused collisions like this.
And it was kind of out of nowhere. I mean, Monarowitz knew he was there. And Snyder looked like he had it. There you see, he's got it. And then I'm not quite sure what happened to cause that contact between the two.
Yeah, very interesting right there. As we've got a spinner actually on pit entry. Since as Galindo looked like he went around at the first chicane.
Yeah, an intriguing situation right at the start of the window for a lot of the drivers. Isaac Snyder also made his way on in. You mentioned the spin for Entercindes Galindo. Everyone else coming in. So an intriguing scenario now for all these drivers.
Galindo had just gotten by Uldis Puteklis on track 2 that last lap, so that's going to be a lot of lost ground for him as well.
So this is the pushrod racing machine. You see trying to come on in. A bit of a giggle actually from the radio in response to this, I believe, here as, whoa.
That was a close call from behind. Wow. Good heads up.
Yeah, a bit of a scare for the Kinetic Europe Pro driver as right there just shoots the gap.
Yeah, it's very close to being a save actually. Just unfortunately went completely around on him in the second part, but good effort. And I actually don't think he would have lost out too much right there.
So now the question's got to be, how much damage does Isaac Snyder have, and where has he come back out on track?
Would have tagged his right rear if there was anything. The wing end plate looks okay, but you have to take a look at the side part and see if he's picked up anything.
Yeah, he looks pretty good.
Keep in mind, he did have the fast rear available if he elected to choose to use it. That's the main thing as well.
True.
Dawson Brock, Dick Miller, Hanson Pete, and Travis Henderson all extended their runs an additional lap as well in the HPDs. Kirk Crum was able to extend his run in the GT1s an additional lap as well.
That's important for him because remember, he was battling hard with Ross Banfield. So now Banfield, he's stuck in a little bit of traffic actually. So this might be a really good scenario for Kurt Crum to set him up for the rest of the race.
You go for the 12-lap strategy rather than the 11.
And how critical is this, Christian, for that splash and dash scenario now to be able to make it to this distance?
Well, it's a very long play because it's only really going to become apparent at the very end of the race. Because if he comes back out and they're kind of still locked together in draft and whatnot, then they're going to be that way basically until that last stop. But in the last stop, he's going to be taking on board less fuel, so he should build a little bit of a gap.
You can see Crum currently taking the service. Dallas Pataska is currently projected to potentially still hold on to the class lead. It's been a dominant race for Dallas Pataska in this class. His lead has gone down a little bit after the sequence by a couple seconds, but he does have the chance to pass along. Crum actually taking a longer stop by 2-3 seconds, in fact, Christian.
Yeah, that'll be because Dallas would have pitted at the end of 11, so he would have still probably had around about 4 liters still in the tank, so Kurt has to add that, and that's why he's a little bit slower there.
So that explains that. And either way, Kurt Crum cycles behind Claessens and Banfield for the time being. And the last of the 4 HPDs have also made their way to the pit lane for their respective service. Dawson Brock, Hanson Pete, Dick Miller, and Travis Henderson for their service.
Dawson Brock should get out here first of these guys.
You can see them already in the pit boxes. Isaac Snyder and Raleigh Thompson have already passed on by. Thompson has closed the gap to Snyder to
Oh,
8
tires for Brock.
seconds. Oh, and that's interesting. We weren't expecting tires, Christian.
Yeah, I have a feeling that maybe he wasn't either. It looks like he's spinning up the rear wheels whilst he's on the jack. So maybe not, but I have heard that it's fairly tight. You know, the last stint and the splash and dash is a little bit greasy. So I can understand maybe wanting to be cautious, and it might not work out too badly, but obviously it's a big short-term loss.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that it's a short-term loss, but I'm glad that if that was a mistake, it happened to him now and not later, because he's got his work cut out for him, but he's still got 96 minutes. So that tire strategy, you know, the impromptu tire strategy, I should say, for Dawson Brock, that might work out well. I mean, he's got his work cut out for him, but now he's got these tires for another 90 minutes, and that is going to be a long-term advantage, especially in the last half an hour.
Yeah, it really just comes down to is whether you can actually get extra pace out of them and kind of offset that time difference.
Yeah, that's the major question, because 17 seconds is the difference between tires and no tires for the pit stop sequence. Meanwhile, Snyder continues to run out in front and continues to have the lead chipped away by Thompson. Three-tenths picked up this lap by Thompson on raw pace alone.
He's slowly closing the gap down, but it's still going to be a while before he actually gets within striking distance, that's for sure.
Wally Thompson, of course, the defending winner in this class from last year in that eventful finish. Really trying to pick up the pace here to close up the gap right here. That's where he's lost a little bit of time ground. Able to chip away, in fact, on the corner exit. I should say half a tenth. Back down another tenth full. He's been really good, I have to say, Thompson, in the braking zones today. That's been something that he's executed ever since his first mistake of the race. Walker and Muir, meanwhile, battling for position, and they have traffic to deal with.
Yeah, good job by Dick Mueller to hang with him here through that traffic. Ryan Walker trying to hang on to this last step of the podium. This is where we've seen Ryan Walker all race long so far, is right ahead of someone, underneath pressure. He's done a phenomenal job, but that is a lot to ask to keep that up.
Oh, and a bad run through the corner that time as Walker loses some ground. Dick go for the position. No, he doesn't. He elects to continue to save. Remember, the 83 was able to stretch it one lap further on his fuel stint. The last time as Walker goes off in the sand a little bit.
Yeah, you got to be really careful through there. We've seen guys get slowdown penalties today already, and that was a close call for Walker, but nonetheless, he's got the position still. Looks like he might be overdriving it just a little bit as Mueller gets a little bit sideways.
It's a little bit of ground once again. And now they'll have to reset for this grouping for the Mulsanne straight. And will the 83 elect to go for the run if he gets it is the big question, as a good corner exit that time from Ryan Walker.
Last lap around, he did not go for the pass in the Mulsanne chicane, but I don't know if he was as close, so we'll have to see, as Mueller having a couple of issues there, it sounded like. I'm not quite sure what happened there.
I think he might have picked up a slowdown and was just kind of clearing it over a long period of time, but definitely didn't bring himself within attack range.
Yeah, this is going to take potentially another lap to try and reset, get himself back in a position to be able to scrap like this. Keep in mind, 20 seconds behind the leader. Dawson Brock is still 13 seconds behind this. And that's the intriguing layer of all this, where if Dawson Brock didn't take tires, he'd be in the podium positions right now still, likely. Instead, he's trying to claw himself back forward up to Buteklis, who is 4 seconds up the road.
Yeah, he probably would be. And I was watching his outlap too, right after he had those fresh set of tires, and it was kind of sloppy. I know he's had to get him up to temperature, and he was really trying to push hard. He was sideways through a couple of corners, had a couple of moments there, but I mean, he is really trying to drive the wheels off this HPD right now to get back in contention. He's got, like I said earlier, he's got his work cut out for him. Oh, is a lot of smoke ahead of him. That is George Gruber in the Corvette.
Yeah, big lock up there into Mulsanne, and good job by him actually not to end up out in the gravel.
Yeah, it's been an adventure for Gruber, where he came in a little bit earlier than everyone else. He's been running on his own much of the race. His pace last time by is 3:49, compared to the leader's 3:46 for the class. It's actually going to cost Brock some time as Gruber goes off the track.
Straight down the escape road there, a nice reverse back on, and he'll be good to go, but definitely struggling with the brakes there on the Corvette.
Did a great job to keep it out of the wall. I was really surprised he didn't. Got it back out on track nicely. There you see, just straight off, and he hesitates there for a second. Like you said, Christian, he's got that access road there to the right. And I think he was afraid of maybe going down there too far and getting stuck. So he kept it on. He knew it would be a softer impact with the tires, but either way, he didn't make any contact. So that worked out probably as well as it could have for him.
Yeah, I think a good decision there by him to actually, give up on the corner. We've seen a lot of times where drivers will try and make the corner, even though they've gone in way too deep, and then they end up out in the gravel, and then that's kind of it. You're going straight to the tire at that point.
Now Mueller has caught up to Walker.
This was expected to take that full lap in those 3+ minutes to get around the circuit to regroup. It's again the matter of, does he save or does he go? Just the second, make it third lap started on the stint for Ryan. It's his third lap, turned to fourth lap at the end of the completion of the circuit.
Not reeling him in very rapidly.
It's almost looking like he's doing the lift and coast method just about, Christian.
Yeah, and obviously in the draft, that's a totally viable way to try and extend out to another lap, and you can normally quite easily achieve that.
And the reason, too, they're running down the middle of the road is, it was talked about a little bit for those watching along with Majors 24. This is a public road where, because of the way it's graded, there is a little bit of a dip for drainage from the middle of the road by about a degree or so. And it was talked about for these cars at about this time to be able to be quicker would run down the middle because of the advantage to get an extra mile per hour. And that's what it seems they're doing, at least for parts of the racetrack here.
Yeah, it basically gets the bottom of the car closer to the track, and with quite a few of these cars that we have here, they're essentially more drag efficient the closer you get them to the ground. So the GT1 definitely benefits from it, and I think the HPD does as well. The kind of reason why you don't tend to see that so much in real life is, especially with the prototypes and whatnot, is it will be set up so that it doesn't actually really have enough ground clearance to do it. So if you did that in a real car, you would basically drag the bottom of it along the center line, and you'd essentially wear out the bottom of the car if he did it for the whole race.
Some intriguing differences between some of the setup for the sim versus the real world in turn, but also the retroness of today's classes as well. Eric Mickey, by the way, has come in for a pit stop at 14 laps for his stint in the Porsches, so those drivers are expected to come down for stops. An early stop for Mickey, in fact, by about a lap than expected.
A little bit early on this one. I'm not quite sure why he's let to do that, but they're really kind of wide in terms of strategy, what they can do in the Porsche Cup, just because they can obviously run out to about 15 laps and whatnot. So there's a lot of variance, and I guess obviously he's decided that now's the time.
Ooh, and Aitor Sintes Galindo has retired for the day. He has wrecked by himself. That's a tough break for the driver who was riding in 9th place at the time in the number 11.
Was about to bring that up as he had a wreck in Indianapolis after going off into the sand and into the Armco barrier again in Indianapolis. He immediately put the car on the tow truck, as you can see here he is right here. Watch on the corner exit coming up here to the right side of the racetrack and how quickly it kicks him out.
Yeah, he ran wide, and it looked like he was all right. Looked like he was perfectly fine, but these HPDs, yes, see right there, he felt confident, got back on the gas, and ooh, scary moment for whoever that was coming through. I think that might have been Colin Marzolf, who takes his position away from it. Takes his position away now.
Tough break for him, as the 11 is already out of the race. Dallas Pataska, meanwhile, in the GT1s, has been having a very dominant performance. 6 seconds now the gap, Christian, so far. And we've talked a lot about Dallas in Sunday's praises. He's been very dominant today in this car from the get-go.
He has, but Tim Clison's has cycled up to second, and I'm one, not really sure how he's done that, and two, the gap isn't extending out between the pair of them. So I actually think that this is closer than it might appear at the moment, and I'm curious to see if Tim can actually close this down. He was about 7 seconds back, and now he's about 6. So at the best, they're equal pace, and at worst, the advantage is actually towards Tim in terms of from Dallas's perspective. So I'm not quite sure how Tim actually cycled to second, because he wasn't second before the pit stop, so he must have had a shorter stop. But obviously now, at the moment, looking very competitive.
To answer the question, yes, he did, Christian, by 5 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds like he's committed to the 11-lap strategy then. But I'm a little bit surprised as to why Dallas's stop wasn't kind of a similar margin, because he also ran 11 laps.
Saw the same thing between Kurt Crum and Ross Banfield. Now Banfield has that top spot over Crum for third place, and that was a difference in pit stop strategy as well between those two, even though they were nose to tail for the first dozen laps of the race.
As you can see in the mirror, that's an HPD driving by Robbie Thompson. And it should be worth noting that Thompson's gap to Snyder as well, by the way, it has reduced significantly to now under 4 seconds all of a sudden to Isaac Snyder. Snyder has really struggled with the traffic as Sam Harper also comes on in to the right side, you see.
Yeah, Sam actually running out to kind of what I expected the distance to be for that car, so he ran out to 15 laps in the Porsche Cup.
7/10 gain by Thompson last time on Snyder as well in the HPD class. And now, as Thompson now has to slow down a little bit.
Well, just when he had that gap close it down a little bit more, just another setback for the 58.
I lost him a few tenths there, but he'll drive by Dallas Pataska now. It's been incredible the pace that Thompson's put on to close back up. Have to say, Christian, this entire race, he has been dedicated since that first lap mistake to get up to the front.
Yeah, and Riley's given us some really good races this year where he's had early setbacks and then kind of fought back through the field, and it's great to watch, but you can't help but think if he'd stopped having those setbacks, then he'd have picked up a fair number of race wins at this point.
Have to agree in some cases in that, Mark, as we take a look back at the battle for third position. But it's been incredible as well to see some of the drivers who have great chances for good points days if things hold out for the next hour and 21 minutes as well here, Nick.
Yeah, a lot of these drivers are in really nice positions. Sam Harper, we just mentioned, he's sitting fourth right now in the points. This would be a great day for him. The problem is that the guys in front of him in points are, well, Dallas Pataska is 5 points ahead of him, and he's also leading his class, so not too much gain there. Tim Claessens, he is the overall leader, of course, by 2 points over Handsome Pete, so I think the 21 there of Pete Herod, I think that's what you're really going to have to watch in terms of the points today, as we ride on board here with Dick Mueller, who continues to be very content sitting behind Ryan Walker, picking off a draft from him.
Continuing to save. A lot of information. You can see that for the drivers, keep in mind where you see all those zeros, that's going to be data that's available to all the competitors. For obvious reasons, you cannot see that when following along with the competitors, as he sends himself nearly off to the sand trap, and that's been a trouble spot for other competitors today.
Probably the most dangerous corner on this track, I would say. I mean, you normally see mistakes happening around other areas of the track too. You see, just actually nearly got into the back of Ryan Walker there, but able to keep out of the gravel trap and keep going. But you see mistakes at other areas of the tracks, but at other areas of the track, but what you don't tend to see is big incidents. Yeah, at Indianapolis, pretty much every time the car goes off, it's a big incident, and that's realistically without fail. If you make a mistake in the first kind of the fast right, it tends to throw you off into the wall on the right, or you carry so much speed that you then hit the tires on the other part, or as we saw with Sintes Galindo, you get in the gravel on the exit and it spits you back to the left. So it's a really, really difficult corner. I think that's probably the hardest corner on the track, just because there's time to be gained through there, but it's so risky. It's so high risk to try and push through Indianapolis.
And the banking through there, Christian, makes it really tempting, because to a driver that looks like an awesome turn to pull some time in, but and it's often too late by the time you've realized you've driven in way too deep, and that's what we just saw there with Dick Mueller almost getting a little bit too deep in there, and like you said, almost getting into the back of the 97 of Ryan Walker.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that kind of corner where it tempts you into pushing it, and you only need to get it slightly wrong one time, and it's a really big incident.
And now Walker has that buffer as a result of all that for the next couple of laps or so once more. Under an hour and 20 minutes on the clock, by the way, for our competitors. Bobrovsky is catching up to Baker, it should be worth noting.
Yeah, I've been watching this one for the last lap or so, Justin, and Bobrovsky, he had a slowdown about 2 laps ago that he just had to blip the throttle down the Mulsanne straight. So that was no fun for him. That put a damper in his plans to catch up here to David Baker in front of him. So he's definitely had to work for it, and I think right now, you know, he's just kind of taking it easy after that slowdown. He hasn't been pushing it too hard. He's got time. He's got no pressure from behind. That's what a lot of these drivers are focused on right now.
He'll say hello to Bob Beltrami for the time being, but in that type of a race where this team started out all working together, remember, battling for the class lead before trouble ensued off down the Mulsanne Straight.
Yeah, and that incident has really split up that GT3 Cup class. Sam Harper now has quite a commanding lead. He's got almost 17 seconds over Eric Mickey, and David Baker, who was running at the tail end of the classes, he's 52 seconds off the lead, but he's sitting in third right now.
The thing is, when it comes to Sam Harper, though, Christian, is he had a 36-second stop. Everyone else, a minute or more.
That's definitely true. So he's going to fall back, obviously, kind of going with that splash early on, which probably makes Eric Mickey the de facto class leader.
Or trying to change things up with the tire strategy, too, when you think about it.
Yeah, it's possible, and I know it will be a tough challenge to get the GT3 tires to the end of the race without changing them. So we'll have to see if anybody does run into problems with that, or if people just accept that they're not going to be able to do it and they decide to take a set of tires earlier on in the race.
All going to be very intriguing here for the mix-up of the strategy as we look back in that battle going on for third spot, separated by 2.2 seconds. What do you think is going through a driver such as Broski's mind, knowing you're on the recovery drive, you're already used to fast repair, you've had to go off-cycle on your strategy, you're playing the long game. What's going through your mind here, Nick, to make sure you don't have your head spin out of control?
Yeah, right now he's trying not to get tunnel vision. I mean, he's got his eyes glued right now on David Baker's number 33 car in front of him, and that can be troublesome for drivers, especially like we were just watching Dick Mueller through Indianapolis. You know, you got to run your own race here, and Vavrosky's doing a great job of that because he is really closing that gap, as we're able to visually see now. It's been a couple seconds over the last few laps, down to 1.5.
Should be worth noting, you may notice on the pylon, Riley Thompson has had another spin in the 58 after closing up the gap to under 3.5 seconds for the overall lead. He looped it around in the Ford chicanes this past time by, and that's lost him another 5 seconds. Again, Thompson had closed the gap to 3.6 seconds before his spin.
This will show you just how hard he's pushing it too, because he didn't even make the Ford chicane, right? He just flew right through it, and it was the entrance back onto the track that threw him for a loop.
It's also worth noting in live action he had a massive cut of the racetrack, so things are escalating here, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is kind of the thing that you've got to make sure that you don't double down on when you do make a mistake. You don't want to compound the problem, and obviously early on he lost a lot of time with that first lap spin, and now to have another one and kind of undo. Well, I say undo because obviously he is back up in second, but realistically he should be up there fighting for the lead at this point, and it's really just a gift to Isaac Snyder there.
Might have been a gift to Ryan Walker as well, depending on how much time he's going to lose there.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan's quite a little bit further back at the moment, but obviously if there's further issues for Riley, then he'll definitely be back in the clutches.
All very interesting to see how things play out. Riley Thompson now 12 seconds back after being as much as 3 seconds behind before the issues this past lap, as now we follow along with Walker's back in. Still very committed to saving fuel as that 83 machine, and how critical is that going to be here for the splash and dash portion of the run? Keep in mind they're approaching already halfway through the stint this time as they make their way through some of the traffic.
We've seen it work out. I mean, just on that last pit strategy, that's why the GT1 field is so separated, is because people were able to stretch it a lap further or commit themselves just a little bit longer. Dick Mueller being very aggressive here with that fuel saving strategy, and You know, it almost cost him a little bit following Ryan Walker, but...
Oh, and Riley Thompson's gone to the pits and has spun the car!
No.
Riley Thompson has spun it out after electing to come in for an early stop.
Those tires have got to be shot on that 58 after spinning so many times.
It's very confusing, though, how he's just had this one lap where he's just had a multitude of errors and problems.
Yeah, obviously he found something was wrong with that car if he had to come in that quickly. Another cut through a corner, this time on the pit entry. He's also had an issue stopping the car into the pit box as well. After all this, it has been a disastrous sequence for Riley Thompson.
Yeah, I have to wonder if something else isn't going on, because that's very unusual. Obviously, to see a second mistake was kind of possible, you know, obviously an isolated incident, but to have multiple of them in the same lap, and I think he's actually probably going to have a penalty here as well for an unsafe pit entry.
His initial incident a lap ago when he went through the Ford chicanes, he aggressively went over the curbs there. Christian, do you think he's got any kind of damage underneath?
He might have, but I think at the moment it kind of points to maybe he's got a controller issue. Obviously, it's been a couple of times now where he's just kind of really blown through the corners. So it looks like maybe he's got some kind of braking issue.
A disastrous race all of a sudden for the TDR driver, as this all gives Isaac Snyder a commanding advantage of 27 seconds over the field. Thompson has left the pit box after 1 minute and 1 second of service as well. Problem is for Thompson, he is 10th now in the class, way far behind the rest of the pack.
Something's happened in GT1 as well. Tim Claessens is within 2 seconds of Dallas Pataska.
Yeah, he's really closed this gap. I just noticed as well.
And I think it's because Dallas Pataska had to slide himself as a result of contact from Dawson Brock. And now it's the question of, how is Dallas Pataska's car going to be? Absolute craziness has now broken out, so Pataska's now dealing with damage on his race car on the back end.
Yeah, you can see it on the wing and the left side of the car. Not so much the left side of the car, but just the left rear end plate has definitely got some damage, so he's probably going to be lacking a little bit of straight line speed.
The good thing for Pataska is that these GT1s, their next pit stop is coming right up, so he should be able to use that fast repair. I don't think he's had to use it today so far.
Yeah, I think that's about the most fortunate thing that's happened here, really, for him. Obviously, lost the lead. It was actually back up to over 8 seconds, so he was kind of extending that gap out, but lost all of that, and now picked up damage as well. It's definitely not what he would have wanted.
Especially after having a commanding lead much of this race. You never know what's going to happen, right? We're starting to see things really kick off when it comes to some of this attrition now. Approaching 1 hour to go on the clock. Can Tim Claessens make this a fight now? Is the big question. To close up the Pataska, Claessens overshot the corner in the Porsche curbs. Pataska was able to still stick the corner despite the damage.
I think it's interesting that nobody has really had a clean run in terms of our class leaders, with the exception of actually Isaac Snyder. He's the only one who's not really had anything go wrong for him so far in the race.
Well, the thing is, when it comes to Snyder, he did get into contact with lap traffic, remember, as Tim Claessens has elected to come in and pit. In fact, Christian, all of a sudden in the GT1s, the 451 coming in early, 9 laps.
Yeah, that's definitely surprising to see him in that early. Obviously, he did have that shorter stop, and I wonder if maybe he's elected to kind of split the race evenly from this point, where he's just going to kind of I think he did an 11 or 12 lap run to begin the race. So if he's doing 9s, I can kind of see how that would work out for him. But he has also got some damage too. You saw there, kind of a bunch of the panels popped back out. So I'm wondering if that was part of that decision as well.
We're joined by Claude Belval, who's been having a quiet day, 9th position in the HPDs. Tom Drelling, who had technical issues earlier, who is also cycled to 19th overall, selected to come on in as well for service. And Claude Belval, again to the side of him, trying to search for his pit box.
Yeah, that was a bit of a close call.
One car rolls, the R1 go coming in. Have a hard time seeing the lollipop man on your end.
See here, riding on board with Belval. Having a pretty good run today as well. Oh, man.
And he realized that the last second right there that the Aston Martin was going to be right in his way as he was coming in.
That is... you can't get much more unlucky with the timing of pit road here.
Welcome to Circuit de la Sarf, everybody, where anything can happen. It's been an intriguing Le Mans 2.4 so far. I'd like to take the time to remind those who are just tuning in how things have fared out for today. It's been an eventful race so far, where Riley Thompson battled for the HPD lead, spun on the first lap. That led in part to Isaac Snyder taking over the lead. It was reduced to 3 seconds the gap for those drivers before Riley Thompson had a cavalcade of mistakes break out just a few laps ago. He has since come down to the pit lane. Riley Thompson is a minute and 46 seconds behind Isaac Snyder, your overall leader. He leads over Ryan Walker now and Dick Miller, with Handsome Pete and Yudis Puteklis the top 5. For when it comes to the GT1s, Dallas Pataska is dealing with damage at the moment, Nick, but is currently still holding on to the class lead after his closest competitor also came in.
Yeah, like we said, the timing for him worked out well. Obviously, the situation was unfortunate for him, getting into Dawson Brock there a handful of laps ago. But, yeah, he's making it work. I mean, this is contact at Le Mans. We haven't seen that work out for anyone today. And, well, up until now, because Dallas Pataska is continuing to put on a show here in GT1 for us.
Ross Banfield is in second, Kirk Crum in third in the class. Tim Klassen's George Gruber the top 5 at the moment, as Pataska actually coming in right now. He'll come in for his 10th lap, so looking like it may be, if he goes the same distance, an 8-lap stint to close things out, possibly, Christian?
Yeah, I think it will be around about that. What I was like kind of looking at was it's going to be 11, 22, 33, and then depending on the end of the race, it was either going to be 5 or 6 laps.
Yeah, but this stint only made it 10 laps. It had taken the fast repair to be able to repair the back bumper for that car. Sam Harper, don't forget, is leading in the Porsches at the moment by a significant margin over Eric Mickey after tire strategy came into play.
Yeah, it's certainly been domination for Sam Harper last hour or so here in the third class we've got.
Making the strategy work on the older tires. He's expected to be among the drivers with intriguing strategy as we take a look at Handsome Pete now, all of a sudden. So Handsome Pete currently in front of Yudis Puteklis now for position.
Big points implications here for Handsome Pete. 2 points behind Klassens for the overall lead in the standings coming in this thing. And Klassens, of course, with struggles of his own down in his Aston Martin. So a great opportunity for that number 21 machine today.
Yeah, today's going to shape out interesting when it comes to these classes, Christian. And when you try and, say, choose a car, what goes through your mindset of what class do I want to run for this event to be able to score X amount of points?
Well, there is definitely some aspects of kind of being tactical with your car choice in terms of you can kind of pick out who your closest competitors are. You can wait until really late in the week to see what class they're going to be in, and then obviously if you kind of don't feel like you can sort of compete with them in that car, then you can always pick something else, and you can kind of spread yourself across multiple classes. And the interesting thing for me about that is then it means that nobody really gets to do anything, because nobody can kind of gain any point. If everybody say in the top 3 wins their class, then the points don't change. So is actually something worth saying about being in the same class as your closest competitors, because if you do beat them, you know that you will gain points on them. And so you can kind of play either aspect, but to be honest, for me personally, I just pick whichever car I think is going to be the most fun. So that's why I'm just going to race GT1 here, just because it's the one I don't get many chances to run the C6R, and the thing sounds like it's destroying the world as it drives along, and that's just really cool to me. So that's always how my car choices are made.
So you like seeing global destruction, if I understand that.
I mean, it sounds incredible. Nothing else sounds like the Corvette.
Well, speaking of Corvette, George Gruber just put on a smoke show with his Corvette. Got a little hot down in the S's. Just a single car spin for him. Got stuck in the grass for a while, though, waiting for everyone to get by. There he goes.
Yeah, and it can bite you quite aggressively through Dunlop there on that downhill. You got to be careful. It tempts you into running it wide open, but it's very, very kind of on edge as to whether you can do it or not.
By the way, that's what the sound of the Corvette is like. Definitely, you can hear the raw horsepower, Christian, in this car.
Yeah, and it's definitely quite potent down the straights. You can actually see with the HPDs that they're able to pass them, say, on corner exit and sort of in the acceleration phase, but then when they get to the top end, the GT1s are very, very fast cars in a straight line, and HPDs actually start to struggle, and with the GT1 you can actually draft up to a HPD at the end of a straight.
Taking Cordell Colon, he's been now put into a battle with Ryan Mayer all of a sudden. For Ryan, very quiet day today. His last stop was fairly quick. 4 laps the difference on their stints at the moment. Bombshell Motorsports machine having a roller coaster ride today in some of the incidents. Take a step aside. As Isaac Snyder continues to lead once more here with under an hour to go on the clock for the Le Mans 2.4 for the Major Series European Pro Split. Welcome back to the Le Mans 2.4 on GSRC for the European Pro Split for the Major Series. It has been an intriguing one so far. Justin Prince along with Nick Smeg, along with Christian Challenger, Sean Ambrose in the director's seat with Dougie Beard providing the cameras for today. As Isaac Snyder has come on in for his second pit stop of the race. It's been domination station for Isaac Snyder, been up at the front much of the day today.
It sure has. He should be able to take his time here and get back out. Sounds like Dallas Pataska has made up a move on track.
Dallas Pataska, remember, coming in a couple laps ago. It's been very quick on pace. He's right now behind Tim Klassens, in fact, by a little while, but there was a difference in pit stop time. 46 seconds for Pataska, 30 seconds for Klassens. Here is the move you can see with an HPD in front. In fact, forcing a mistake that time from Banfield.
Yeah, Banfield with a slight lock up there, but you can kind of see what I was talking about a little bit with the HPD and the GC1s right there, that the HPD not able to get away at the end of the straight actually created that opportunity for Pataska, but hasn't been able to escape Banfield, and I expect Banfield is going to be able to stay attached to the rear wing of Pataska for some time now.
See how long it plays out here. And the interesting thing is going to be, can Pataska now get up to Tim Klassens with the difference on the strategy? It's going to be a big mark as here comes the big move from Banfield. He elects to take the run.
And he got him. No chance that Pataska can take that stab back quickly, at least. Oh, a little bit of a slide for Banfield. Well, that's going to open the door right back up for Pataska.
This isn't really what either of them need, though, because in all of this, Klassens is having his own run, and it's probably actually extending out his advantage.
Exactly. Yeah, they've got to be working together right now, especially with just 52 minutes left.
Pataska doesn't look like he wants to do that right now either, though. Heading to the Porsche curves, making it side by side, going for the send, and able to make it stick as Banfield gives him some space on the corner exit.
So what does Banfield do? He knows he's quick enough to get back up there and contend with him. Does he go for it again, or does he sit back as they've got to let an HPD by? That's Bob Beltrami.
Beltrami Salami trying to cut his way on through. Seems it's going to affect more so Banfield for the time loss. As a result of the timing, as the curbing kicked up by Pataska on that corner entry.
Aggressive over the curves goes Dallas.
Yeah, very aggressive through those curbs that time.
And initially it looked like... Sorry, I was just going to say, initially that looked like that was a big game for Pataska with Beltrami in between them, but then it flipped around when it got to the chicane.
Notice how much he is taking those curbs very aggressive when it comes to some of his arcs, I've noticed as well. Past few corners as well to try and pull off and away. Just about breaking the toe here as Banfield struggling a little bit this lap.
Banfield really struggled up the hill. He got really sideways. He really pushed it maybe a little bit too hard.
And now he is just barely hanging on to the draft as a result here. The interval 16.7 seconds between Pataska and Klassens right now on the track. Meanwhile, Proteckless and Mower are now fighting. Handsome Pete has elected to come in for the class this time. Meanwhile, Proteckless will lose the spot. The 666 to the 83 in Indianapolis as they go into Ornage. Some great battles going on around this racetrack here in this final hour or so. As the air drivers are expected to come in and have. Handsome Pete has talked about. Dawson Brock, Travis Henderson all came in for service this time.
Yep, Henderson in his 24 machine with a good quiet run today. He's rolling to his box right now. That'll allow Mueller and Walker and the likes of the rest of the HPDs to cycle through past him.
Off and away goes some of those drivers. You can see Handsome Pete with the big advantage over the rest of the field. 21-second stop only, though, Christian. It's Dawson Brock taking more than 32 seconds again.
Yeah, a very short stop at 21 seconds, actually. So I'll have to see if that means that kind of his last stop is going to be significantly longer.
Travis Henderson electing to take tires this time. Guess we'll lose him some more time on the track. For Brock, it's only gotten him to 4th position on the racetrack after being top 3 much of the race.
Two drivers that just went by Henderson in the pits were Riley Thompson and Uldis Puteklis. There you see him, nose to tail, as Thompson, for the second time today, tries to fight his way up through the field.
Trying to gain valuable points, and this has been tough for Thompson. Mistakes early on. Rallying back. Mistakes in the mid-race. Now, trying to get some of those points back for the end of the race. For the final 48 minutes. Bit of a toe for Puteklis. Thompson not going to give up easily, though. Will take away the position into the first chicane.
That surprised me how well Uldis was able to hold on to him there. I thought for sure, especially at the beginning of that run, that Riley was just going to be able to fly right past him, and that would be case in point. But here comes Puteklis right back at him, down the Mulsanne straight into the second chicane.
We go for the move late. No, he will back off, especially with Sam Harper just ahead of them up the road.
That was a good call there. Don't want to mess up the great race that Harper's had.
Drive right on by Harper. In fact, you can see they're already closing up to where Brock and Mueller are for their respective battle as well. Just a couple seconds up the road. So at the very least, Thompson may get himself up to 4th position, if not a shot at a podium, if he can keep the pressure up and the pace up.
Definitely think he has the pace to do it. It's just a question as to if he's going to have more problems or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this might become a 4-car battle pretty quickly, actually, at this pace.
Yeah, I was about to say. Last time by, Thompson picked up a lot of time.
And there you see the headlights shining brighter and brighter as it gets darker and darker. 9:30 virtual standard time here at Le Mans.
You see the weather once more. It's dropped even more so. Even more cooler, Christian. Down to 78 Fahrenheit, the track temp. The high was 85 for today.
This is kind of, well, this in the morning is sort of the points where you can kind of get the best laps in, just because you can see the most, and the track temperature and air temperature is almost kind of at one with each other and dropping down. So it's kind of when you will see the fastest times. When it gets to full night, you tend to see a little bit of drop off, not because the track's actually slower, but just because it's harder to kind of pick out references and whatnot, and then kind of it switches back around when it gets through to the morning. So I actually really like that we're running this race where it kind of starts off in the daylight and then moves through pretty much to a night finish almost.
Thompson is now broken away from Puteklis, and one car making a mistake in front of Thompson.
That's Cologne.
Yeah, Cordell Cologne, who is 7th in class, having a bit of an off there.
That's the last thing that Riley Thompson wanted to see happen in front of him. Good thing there's no big curbs that Cologne had to go over there to throw the car off. He was able to just safely keep it pointed in the right direction.
Lost Thompson some time as a result of the checkup, but We'll see how things play out. For Dawson Brock, meanwhile, the pressure continues to rely to the back bumper. Or should I say the back wing from Mueller.
This is the spot that Mueller has been in all day. Earlier, we saw him following Ryan Walker. Now it's Dawson Brock. When does he stop fuel saving and make the pass? Does he wait to the last couple of minutes, or is the go time got to be soon?
Thoughts on that, Christian?
Yeah, I'm wondering if he doesn't actually ever make the pass on track at all, and if the pass actually happens entirely in the pit lane with a shorter final stop.
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Going to be very intriguing to see how things play out here today, as once again electing to save towards that back wing. No major run to the inside. Both of them dialed in near identical on the brakes that time. But the big question mark is what happens when Thompson gets there, because I don't think it's a matter of if. It's a win, because Thompson is now within drafting distance of this top two. Oh, here he goes for the move now. Sees his opportunity heading into Indianapolis. Miller going for the position, goes for the squeeze, makes the spot.
Great job to get around him. Textbook.
You have to wonder if he heard the footsteps coming and said, you know what, Christian, it's time to go.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of think at some point that was going to have to happen. You know, he'd been sat there for a long time, and obviously Riley Thompson's kind of running them both down. I don't think he's necessarily going to be able to hold off Riley if he does get there, but we also don't really know what Riley's situation is regarding strategy, because obviously he had that rather interestingly timed pit stop where he kind of had that spin on entry that was pretty much off sequence with everybody else. So we'll just have to see how that works out.
That's all going to be very interesting. Thompson is the fastest car on the racetrack, keep in mind, as he now joins this fray to make it a 3-car scrap. George Gruber is now in front of this pack as well.
Yeah, they caught George Gruber at a really good time if you're Dawson Brock, right through the chicane, because that's not where you want to catch him if you're Dick Mueller. Oh, close call there. Wow. Oh, and he's going to hit him.
Wow.
Oh, and now he's sideways. So Thompson gets past too. Wow.
Let's take a look at what happened as some dots coming over the text chat from the driver of the 83 as a result of all this. And that could have been much worse than it was, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Gruber ended up in amongst a battle there that he kind of had no desire to be in, and was actually trying to kind of get himself in a good position, but ended up just tagging the back of Mueller into the first part of the chicane and then looping himself around on the exit. So unfortunate deal, but I think aside from time loss, everybody got out of that relatively unscathed.
Cordell Cologne has come into the pit lane, by the way, after only a 5-lap stint. So an intriguing call from the 50 machine. But we stay with this battle for position. Riley Thompson now resetting himself. Did get a chance by Dawson Brock originally for the spot, but Brock was able to get the run on back in this grouping, this lap. Coming up to 12 estimated laps to go for this class, by the way, is a very early break behind them. Dick Mueller able to gain a lot of distance as Dawson Brock backed off a lot into the corner, nearly allowing Thompson right up to him. Thompson will get the run this time. As a result, Brock will give him a lot of space. In fact, nearly going off the racetrack, going to the left side of the circuit.
Yeah, a little bit too enthusiastic to kind of give space right there, I think. But yeah, very early on the brakes there into Mulsanne from Brock, and that made pass quite easy for Thompson, though. His car really does not look the most stable out there. Through Indianapolis there, he was kind of having a bit of a wiggle. And now he's just gone straight on it on Aj.
And something weird is going on again with Thompson. He started blinking his lights all of a sudden and just went straight off the track.
Yeah, Christian, I think you were right earlier when you said he might have had some hardware issues, because he had started to, like Justin said, he was flashing his lights frantically. He got on the chat, wasn't able to say anything on the radio, but I think he maybe had his screen go black or something there.
Yeah, I definitely think he's having some hardware issues, because we just don't see mistakes like this from him, especially not of this frequency.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for him there, then when he was kind of trying to get back going again, he just backed it straight into the fence, so now he's going to be carrying some damage as well as that.
That is such a tough break for him.
Meanwhile, should be worth noting, Harper still holding on to a significant margin over Eric Mickey as well. Sam Harper's going to have some interesting speed, to say the very least, in the closing stages with this call. 10 seconds is still the gap, by the way, amongst the drivers.
We're at that point where if anybody did want to pit, they could actually get to the end from here.
So that's going to be a very critical time from this point forward. By the way, should be worth noting, Thompson did pick up damage swirling around the car against the wall. 58 to the back wing. You see that? That's from backing up into the wall to get back going on the track.
And that's definitely gonna hurt him here and probably curtail any more fight back efforts, I think.
Yeah, he's just got to stay out there. He's got no other choice. No matter what the hardware issue is, it's not too bad. It's just caused a couple of major issues throughout the race. So it's not race ending for him so far, but he's got to scrounge for as many points as he can get right now. Came into this thing tied with Ross Banfield for 8th in the points, and yeah, he's only 33 points out of the lead in the European Pro standings. So just got to do what he's got to do, right? And he's got to try to sacrifice something out of here.
And his teammate Justin Morden, who is someone who races in the BRL's Grand National Series on Saturday nights, just came in as part of the TDR group, has been confirming that the limiter has been kicking on randomly on his car, guys.
What in the world?
The pit limiter. Apparently this was an issue during yesterday's 6 hours of the Glen, which is the endurance race / special event schedule event taking place this weekend on the iRacing calendar. So Thompson's been having major issues here, and that would definitely explain what's going on.
Wow. Yeah, yesterday being the top split of the 6 hours of the Glen on iRacing. That's another thing I was going to make note of, is a lot of these drivers just came fresh out of an endurance race yesterday. Of course, not for the majors, that just being an iRacing special event, but you got to wonder, Christian, would he maybe have that button mapped differently for a different car?
It's possible, though. I tend to kind of keep my button mappings very similar. So I would imagine if he was having that problem yesterday with the LMP2, then he's going to be having the same problem again today with the HPD.
And there goes Dick Mueller around Ryan Walker for 3rd in the HPD class.
What happened to Walker is the big question. He had a 4-second advantage this lap coming in. So Walker lost a ton of time to allow this position battle.
Don't see any major incidents. I wonder if he just had a slowdown or something.
Possibly as well, had to deal with a lot of traffic. So Walker has now fallen out of the podium positions for now as a result of this. This class estimated 11 laps to go.
He's certainly not out of it.
Yeah, it all comes down to the strategy now in the closing stages here to finish this race off, especially with the splash.
Yeah, it's essentially who has the shortest kind of stop, and with the exception of Isaac Snyder in first in the HPD class, I actually think that that's pretty much going to be the defining deal for both our GT1 and GT3 classes, because the stop difference between Sam Harper and Eric Mickey is unknown, but there definitely is one. Harper has had a shorter stop than Mickey already in this race, and likewise there's an offset between Claessens and Pataska in GT1.
Harper doing an impressive job with all this. And keep in mind...
Oh, a mistake with 2 HPDs. Ryan Walker just ran deep into the first chicane, but Dawson Brock has gone off and into the tires behind him.
The 82 around, and he's trying to get his car going. Let's see what happened.
All by himself, it looks like. Man.
Right into a barrier too to boot.
Yeah, trying to chase down Walker through there. I wonder if he was just maybe thrown off by following Walker through there. I mean, that's not anything different than what they've been doing for the past 2 hours, but certainly some braking zone or something there was thrown off for the 82 of Dawson Brock.
So that shuffles him back to 7th position now as a result of that mistake. More than a minute behind the leader, right behind Riley Thompson for the time being. And getting very dark here at this point here too, Christian. When does visibility become a thought point for these closing stages, especially?
Oh, and there goes Brock again.
Oh, another mistake, yeah. Brock again, the second time this lap. What is going on with Dawson Brock now?
Yeah, the first chicane, it looked like he just kind of followed Ryan Walker too deep into the corner, and Walker was able to gather it up without ending up out in the gravel, but Dawson Brock was not able to do that, and now presumably just out of his rhythm a bit, and getting down to Mulsanne corner has had an issue, but he looks like he's picked up more with that second contact, because that looks like it's challenging for him to drive in a straight line at the moment.
Absolutely, right now. Meanwhile, Tim Claessens continuing to hold on to his class lead. You can see the advantage, 14.7 seconds still.
Yeah, it's just all going to come down to what this final pit stop time difference is between himself and Pataska, because he has that 14-second gap, and obviously, as you see there, his last lap was a 3:44.981. Dallas's was a 3:44.601. So, slight advantage for Pataska, but definitely not enough to run down that gap. So it's going to come down to pit stop strategy.
What can he do now at this point, though, to strategize his way in? Because they have 8 estimated laps to go this time by. So they can come in from this point forward.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, nothing. He can just run out the tank and hope that he's going to be filling less than Claessens does at the end of the race. And that's really all it's going to come down to, because the decision has basically been made at this point as to whether you're going to take tires or not. And from the looks of things, nobody has taken tires in the GT1 class. And you're essentially locked in. You know, you have to take the given amount of fuel to get to the end.
Dawson Brock has come into pit as well, by the way, as we look back at Harper once more. This team has done incredible work this campaign. Sam Harper become an incredible driver in this series, doing an incredible job here tonight, just trying to continue to bring this car home for the next 30 minutes.
The longer this run goes on, though, with the GT3s, the more and more convinced I am that Eric Mickey's going to actually jump ahead of him in this final stop, because that gap has been coming down. It's now just over 10 seconds, and I'm fairly sure that Eric's pit stop's going to be shorter by like more than 10 seconds. So he's going to jump out ahead. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I feel like that's going to happen.
I'm just going to jot that down at 30 minutes on the clock. You said that. So it's going to be interesting because at this point, I think the bed's made where if Harper ends up taking tires, let's say, that's going to end up costing him a ton of time and lose him the race here. So he's in a box where he's going to have to hope that the longer stinted tires are going to have to hold on. Tim Klatsons, by the way, has ducked in for his final stop, Christian.
Yeah, Pataska looked like he stayed out, so that's at least 8 liters of fuel more that Klatsons is going to have to fill than Pataska.
And Mickey is also in.
That's surprising because I didn't expect Eric Mickey to pit before Sam Harper.
Yeah, especially this soon. Because Harper is staying on track, so we'll have to see. There he is.
Question is, does he take the tires? And does he go for the double stint compared to Sam Harper, who would be going for what would be a triple stint? Ross Banfield also made it in. Klatsons goes off and away.
That's
tires.
That's half a tank of fuel for Klatsons there.
And Eric Mickey only a 19.6 Christian. So very short stop for Mickey.
Yeah, once again, fuel only.
So double stint on the tires and a very short amount of fuel, only needing 9 laps or so to be able to make it to the end. Now that brings the question mark of how long of a stop will Sam Harper get, as in how much fuel he puts into the tank on his splash.
Sam Harper right now on the Mulsanne straight. He's got Dallas Pataska right behind him, of course, in the GT1 class, that is, but they run right at the same spot on the track right now. Both dealing with the same issues here right now. A little bit of a headache when it comes to the pit stop strategy.
Raleigh Thompson is also ducked in for his final scheduled stop, potentially, of the race. Made it 12 laps his stint. Isaac Snyder currently only 7.4 laps into his stint right now. And Snyder very dialed in right now, it looks like. Nice and calm in that cockpit as you see him on the right side of your screen.
I think he's had a relatively untroubled afternoon. Obviously, he had that contact with Melneritz, which took Melneritz out of the race in the Porsche curves. But aside from that, it really has been untroubled. Obviously, Riley Thompson was running him down, but had his own problems, and that's kind of allowed Isaac Snyder to just run away with the race.
And all of a sudden, a bit of a smile there. Let's take a look at Monerlich, as he is the last car running on the track. It should be worth noting he's had a lot of ups and downs, has been able to get the car going after that contact with Snyder that sent him into the Armco barrier, and doesn't seem to be as happy compared to Snyder, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, his car's looking pretty sad right now, I think it's fair to say.
I mean, if it had a face, it does look like it's frowning. Raleigh Thompson, by the way, is still in the pit lane. He has not gone anywhere, and believe Thompson has jumped out of the car. So Riley Thompson, it's been a disastrous day for him, is out of the 58.
And Sam Harper has just come in the pits as well. We'll keep an eye on that, as here is Ryan Walker back in another battle in the HPDs. Oldest Puteklis, I believe that is, with him.
And this pair has been pretty close the whole race long, but for the majority of the race, Ryan's actually been ahead of Oldest. So it looks like maybe his pace is either dropping off a little bit, or he's playing a strategy angle here with fuel. So 19 seconds was Mickey's stop.
That's going to be very critical to remember. see that differential now on your screen. Mickey does have to deal with some traffic closing in from behind, and off and away Harper, a 16.5.
Wow.
Or 16.6 rather. A very lightning quick stop, so much shorter, was able to stretch it a couple laps further on his stint. 14 laps the distance, 8 laps total.
And Mickey just now coming out of the Ford chicanes onto the front stretch, so wow. Yeah, great job by Sam Harper.
Yeah, and I'm really surprised to actually see that, because I really thought that Mickey would have had a fuel advantage on Harper, having had that longer stop earlier in the race. All I can think is that Harper's been able to make his tires last, and Mickey actually took a set earlier, and I didn't spot that.
Now it becomes the question, can Mickey close in on raw pace alone? Riley Thompson officially out of the race. Your second DNF in the HPDs and total. That will cycle him potentially as low as 24th, if not 25th, officially overall. So all the strategy getting more and more intriguing for this race as more of the traffic drives on by. That Stick Miller is now going to drive on by. Ross Banfield also closing in. That's something we haven't discussed too much, is the traffic that can come into play between the GT1s and the Porsche Cup cars. Just with the speeds shown today as Ross Banfield drafts his way on by Sam Harper. Your thoughts on how this race has played out, Nick?
Well, I'm just impressed. We just noted that Riley Thompson was only the second DNF today, and that's the one thing I was just thinking is just how impressive these guys have been at staying consistent. We've seen a lot of great on-track battles and in all three classes, and we were wondering how the attrition would play out. It wasn't looking too great in the first 30 minutes. We might have thought that the car counts would get slimmer and slimmer, but all but just two are still running pretty strong as well. So yeah, what else can you say? That's the major series for you.
Dallas Pataska hasn't come in and pit for his scheduled stop, his final one of the race yet either, so that's why you're following along with him right now. Will he take his service here? This would be an 11-lap stint. Bit wide that time, trying to avoid Isaac Snyder. He'll come in either way. The time differential about 42 seconds before this stop. A little bit of cut at the curb there on that entry.
Yeah, you certainly got to be careful coming in the stop there. You'll see at the bottom of your screen the comparison with Tim Claessens, who had just come in the previous lap. 28.6 is the magic number.
And there's Tim right there, making his way still through the curves.
Good stop in the box, yeah.
Yep, nice and smooth into the pit stall for the GT1. How long will the stop be is the big question. Hanson Pete will also join them in the pit lane. Here comes Tim Claessens for the final corner.
This is looking good for Claessens.
Oh, Pataska off and away, only a 20.7. This could be close.
It's going to be very close. He's going to be about 2 seconds behind, I think.
Claessens got him.
Claessens jumped on by. Pataska off and away. 8 seconds the difference. Quicker for Pataska to close up the gap. Now it's the question of will the raw pace carry him forward?
He better hustle because he's only got 20 minutes and that gap got even bigger just now. So Pataska's got to really push hard here in the number 23.
Do you think he can do it, Christian, is the big question. 4.3 seconds. Make it 4.1.
I think he can, but I'm surprised that the pace that he's had is actually slower than the pace I expected from him. I was kind of in a hot lap battle with him in a practice session the other day, and we were like touching the top of the 42s almost. So that he's only really been able to do 45s, 46s and whatnot is genuinely surprising to me, and I really thought he would have a bit more raw pace than that. So I've got to think that it's there. Just for whatever reason, he's not been able to unlock it.
That's Dick Miller, who's driven on by the way, as well. What do you do as a driver then to make sure you, if you do that preparation then, Christian, to make sure you unlock that potential?
Well, it's very difficult because obviously in practice you kind of not really got much risk. So what I try and do in practice is I try and push as much as possible so that kind of my point of comfortable pace is kind of higher than it would be otherwise. And then I just have to, I know that in a race I'm going to be slower than I was in practice, and I just have to hope that my kind of offset is smaller than what others see and whatnot, and just kind of aim for a time that I know that I can hit very, very consistently, and just work on staying at that point. But it's not an easy thing to do, and sometimes just the unexpected things happen where you'll be able to match the same pace that you could in practice, and it mainly just comes down to confidence. If you just, it doesn't take a lot, especially around a track like this, where if you just losing a little bit of confidence on the brakes, you won't be able to get the lap time that you know is available.
Tom Durrelling has now jumped out of the race car after only 3 laps in his stint. Remember, had technical issues earlier before in this race. So he had been several laps down, so he is now out of the car. Let's see what happened to Tom.
He's all by himself.
Running fairly slowly.
I think he may have just had more technical issues because he's pretty slow through there. So, yeah, something that happened probably a while back, just a long-term negative effect for him.
Got double confirmation involving the technical issues for Riley Thompson as well, by the way. His wheel pushing random buttons is what's being said. So that would explain where pit limiter gets turned on. If you have, say, this button randomly pressing itself, this button randomly pressing itself, this button randomly pressing itself, it's hard to control that, you can tell.
Yeah, I think at that point you kind of resort back to unmapping just about everything you have and trying to use your keyboard for necessary functions, and that's kind of it. But obviously that's not an ideal situation and not something you can do in the middle of a race either.
Looking back at Tim Claessens, who is still holding on to the 4.4 second advantage now. We were talking about how Dallas Pataska was looking very comfortable up at the front earlier on, had a massive advantage. It's crazy how things could change over the span of just a couple hours here at this racetrack here, Nick.
Yeah, he had the pace, but as we know, especially on these longer races on these longer tracks, it all comes down to a combination, right, of the pace and the strategy, and I think he just got outwitted here tonight by Tim Claessens.
Still plenty of time to sort things out. That's the major key thing. Needs to hope for some luck in part, but also utilize that raw pace, unlock that potential, as there goes an RHPD on by. That's once again Putek was driving on by, who is quietly currently holding on to 3rd position. Incredible drive for Putek, was +4 on the race for him, Christian.
Yeah, and that's really all come in the second half of the race, because in the first half he was definitely in the midfield pack, and obviously drivers such as Ryan Walker and Pete Harrod were ahead of him. But now, as we got down towards the end of the race, he's advanced forwards and is obviously up in the 3rd spot. I think he'd be very happy with that.
Absolutely. Very smooth to the corner for Protectless. And the main thing, too, is the fatigue levels you have to think about. Yes, it's only 2.4 hours, but we're talking about a lot of work being put in by these drivers, Nick, to try and close out the stints, as well as work from sunshine, late afternoon conditions, what's going to be dusk situations.
Yeah, that's the thing, Justin. And these guys are all coming off of that Majors 24, and of course, this just being a fraction of the length of that race. But this one might feel just as long to a lot of these drivers. They're all by themselves out there. They've got to push hard by themselves. They don't get a relief driver, or they're not supported by a huge team of other drivers on their pit wall, waiting for them and spotting for them. They're racing with the rest of their team right now. So even for the drivers that are coming off of the 6 hours at the Glen yesterday, these drivers, it's a whole new mindset when you're out there all by yourself, and the fatigue is certainly going to set in similar to how it sets in over 24 hours over the course of 2.5 hours like they're dealing with today.
Teklis is in. Isaac Snyder's already gone in and out. Dick Miller's already gone into the lane as well for service. So the pit lane has opened back up for the HPDs for one final time, and this is the splash. We were expecting 5 laps to go.
It's the money stop.
Can't afford to make any major mistakes on this stop. Into the pit box goes Putekowicz, Dick Miller, 16 seconds. Isaac Snyder putting in 13 seconds of fuel. Ryan Walker stayed out an additional lap. Putekowicz on 11.9.
Aggressive pit stop there, with the shortest of any of the 3 that we've seen, even though they're pitting on the same lap.
Going to be intriguing how that all plays out for the fuel totals now, as Snyder, as you can see, has already completed his service. Currently leads over the rest of his competition, who have come in for service, by 52 seconds.
Tasker is almost within striking distance of Claessens right now. He's just outside the draft window.
That's huge. He's closed in about 1 second in the past couple laps. Now Ryan Walker, a teammate to draft off of now for Pataska.
Great heads up there by that team, by VRS, to do anything they can to help each other out.
How big is this draft, you feel, going to be? Even if it's just a little bit here to help out close up this gap here, Christian?
I think it's fairly significant. Obviously, as we've seen, the GT1s can catch and almost outstrip the HPDs at end of straight. So if Ryan Walker's kind of in the middle, that's going to help Pataska, especially in that acceleration phase as he's getting up to speed. But the thing is, it goes both ways, you know. So as soon as Walker passes Claessens, he's going to start towing Claessens along.
The timing of these drafts is going to be very critical, we've seen, to close on up. So it's going to be very critical where Ryan Walker reaches Tim Claessens and the draft that Claessens can then get as a result. We'll have to see.
If you're Ryan Walker, do you weave around the track so Claessens can't get it here?
I don't think you need to do anything extreme, but you can definitely kind of choose an unusual side down the straightaway.
Right. Yeah.
For example. Although it doesn't look like he's going to pass him before push. Yeah, I think he's going to think better of that one.
He took a peek for sure.
Remember, this has been a disastrous section for side-by-side all for the past couple weeks with the Majors 24, with the Le Mans 2.4, and Ryan Walker goes for it on the left side. Able to complete that move.
The best place for it, really. That long right-hander in the middle of there is really the only safe passing spot.
And the good news for VRS is Claessens isn't gonna, as Ryan Walker goes to the pits, that doubles down on my point here. He's not going to catch him where he can pick off a draft anyway for him. So.
And St. Pete also has closed up to that grouping, so there's another car to play a factor in the midst of this battle with under 10 minutes on the clock. Less than 3 laps to go for the GT1 class at the moment estimated. Lap times they've been turning 3 minutes 45 seconds.
This isn't a great place for Claessens to be passed. It's not going to cost him a massive amount of time. He is going to get a little bit of draft here onto the Mulsanne.
Not too much though, already losing that drafting distance in front of him. 3.1 seconds still the distance. Pataskis just cannot get into the range fully yet to be able to get to the draft of Claessens.
Yeah, this is a huge gap still to close. I mean, there you see it looks pretty small there, but I mean, when they get into the more twisty bits of the track, it's with just about 3 laps left. That's a tall order. He's going to have to push hard, but he doesn't want to push so hard that, you know, he throws the race away. He's still got a big picture here over 2021.
They do have a Porsche Cup car up the road that can play a factor now too. That's on Erwich, who has been having a very rough race in that SAT 69. I'm talking about the face on the car. Keep in mind. I know that brings Herbie vibes, Nick, when it comes to that thought process, but still. I have to say it's incredible how beautiful this sim can get at this time of night, Christian, here on iRacing too.
Yeah, I've kind of been relatively fortunate that in the majority of the endurance races that I've done on iRacing, I've been scheduled in those kind of transition times, so I either get to do the going through into the night or the coming through into the morning, and it's pretty much my favorite time to drive because you get to see the whole movement of the sun and everything, and it's really cool, and I kind of really enjoy that, and it's worked out nicely a lot of times for me, and now it's kind of my preference. I don't really like driving in the day, if I'm honest. I'll do kind of the transition zones in the night. They're sort of my favorite parts.
Do you like racing in the nighttime, Nick?
I do not. I like, unless the track has lights, I'm pretty good on the oval at nighttime. Good grip there. but no, if you find me on your Le Mans team a couple years from now, do not put me out there at night. I don't recommend that. Probably don't put me out there during the day either. I'd probably save you some time.
I'll pencil you in for midnight then. By the way, that gap is now under 3 seconds, 2.5 seconds. Pataska gained half a second this sector, Christian.
Yeah, and he's got to get within 2 seconds for really this to be on. I think he's going to have 2 to 3 laps to make it happen.
It's estimated 2 to go. Dick Muir has already reached the back end of Pataska, is making things very tricky for Pataska for pressure behind. See them just in the backdrop now, trying to sort each other out. Gap is 2.3.
If he does get a 3rd lap, that'll be huge too. But
and Pataska just got hit by Dick Muir. He's been spun off the racetrack. And the lights were blinking for a good straightaway right before that contact. And the chances for a race win for Pataska are out the window again as he comes across. Take a look.
You saw the flashing of the lights. You saw the heads up there. Both drivers knew what was going on, it looked like. But, just miscommunication at the last second. And that is crucial. That's the race for Pataska.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that was a little bit unnecessary, if I'm totally honest, because Mueller's not in a fight with anybody, and that's the class lead battle right there. And it's very easy for a prototype to out-accelerate a GT car coming out of that section, it's much more difficult for the GT car to try and pull across and make room for a prototype. So unfortunate deal, and obviously that's taken away any chance of a battle in the last couple of laps with the GT1s.
On a positive note, by the way, Travis Henderson is your biggest mover of the race. A +9. Talked about the quiet day for him. He's up from 13th starting position to 4th.
And they've gotten around a couple guys, Henderson and Puteklis both. And there goes Puteklis to the inside, but at the last second, he's got to get on the brakes. Oh, man, fighting back hard on the outside. They're still going to be side by side.
Great intense battling now for this 4th position. Puteklis trying to keep up the run. Gets the run to complete the move in the 666. As they head their way down to Mosen. Here comes the run back from Henderson, though. Henderson electing to back off and wait for the next time to be able to make the dive.
Give him a lot of room there. This is shaping out to be a pretty good run for Puteklis, and a great run here at the end. But Henderson's sticking with him.
This may be one of the closest battles towards the end of this race. Trying to determine valuable points on the line. Puteklis a bit of a wobble now as they approach the braking zone. And locks up the ball. The stand he goes. Henderson drives on by. Another mistake in the closing stages.
Just about survived Indianapolis there. It looked like it was going to get real bad real quickly, but able to keep it going at least, and he's still in contention for this spot.
Henderson was giving him all the room in the world. He was backing off immensely. I was wondering what he was doing. I guess he was mind reading, though, because he knew what was going on in the upcoming turns, and he's able to take that spot away. Now he's going to run a little bit wide.
Keep in mind, we're under 3 minutes on the clock. These drivers are expected to be on the white flag lap. We'll see what flag they get in the next couple. Snyder's
well, that's going to be slow down for Henderson.
And through the
slow
grab.
down. Henderson has to back off. Henderson loses a ton of time. Puteklis now more than a second ahead with under 2 minutes on the clock coming up this time as Travis Henderson loose.
That was a sloppy Ford chicane sequence for both of them, but Henderson really made out badly there, especially when he got back on the acceleration. Got a little bit sideways. Good catch, though, but that might be the end of that battle.
A cavalcade of mistakes coming in once again. As Isaac Snyder, meanwhile, makes his way about half a racetrack away from glory. Minute and 40 seconds on the clock. What a drive it's been for Snyder. Outside of that contact with Malnerwich, very little mistakes today. He has been very dominant on the pace. He's been very quick on the pace today, Christian.
Yeah, and it's just been totally unchallenged. Obviously, Riley Thompson was the closest to him, but had his own issues. And outside of that, he took the lead at the beginning, and that's basically been it. It's been a great race for him, but probably one that's actually not really been that exciting in kind of the best way possible.
It's been an incredible race. Your thoughts on his performance, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, just domination. I mean, the fact that we haven't talked about him much today, that says enough, right?
You can see how dialed in it is. Has his hoodie on his back seat as well. Just has to make his way through one more sector as he goes through Indianapolis and Arnage right here. Differential will be about 21 seconds. Comes across the stripe. Tim Klassen's holding on to the class lead in GT1. Sam Harper holding on to an advantage in the GT3s. 19 and 7 seconds, respectively, those differentials. Today, the drivers had a couple important notes. Nail the strategy and make sure you keep the car clean. And today, the drivers have been kept clean for the most part. George Gruber makes things interesting for Isaac Snyder for the final section. But Isaac Snyder will come across the stripe and win the Le Mans 2.4. Wait for the camera as well, seen as Tim Claeson's trying to make his way through the final sectors of the Porsche curbs now to close up what was an intriguing race for him, where mistakes and strategy also came into play for this class. But the Grizzly TFR Daytona machine, it's going to be one that he will definitely remember in terms of performance. For the organization, this will grow their points gap in the team standings. What's been a dominating season for them? Tim Claeson's checker flag. He blinks his lights in celebration. He wins at Circuit de Wassar. Meanwhile, for Sam Harper, strategy also came into play, guys, especially with that call a couple pit stops ago to be able to get that massive advantage over the driver in the backdrop, Eric Mickey. That was a major difference, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was going to actually go against him, but it seems he's just done a masterful job of keeping the tires on the car and nailing the strategy perfectly. You can see in the background that the Mickey's quite close, but not close enough.
And Nick, you talked about his praises this season. An impressive drive from him. He was in the midst of the battle much of the day today. And in the end, the triple stint was the way to go.
Yeah, this will certainly bode well for him. Second win on the season. And, you know, this just proves Christian's point pre-race. He said this was going to be a strategy game, and it sure was for all the classes today. Sam Harper able to take advantage of that strategy.
Just has one more section to go. Then it's the chance for celebration. He'll be one of the final finishing cars on the racetrack. For Sam Harper, strategy was crucial to get himself the track position, led by as much as 10 plus seconds. He'll go through the final section of the racetrack here. Sam Harper will take home the Porsche Cup victory to close out the day in the Majors 2.4. For the Major Series here for the Le Mans 2.4, I should say. With that post-race coverage coming up in just a few moments, you're watching the Global Sim Racing channel for coverage of the Le Mans 2.4 from the Circuit de Wassar. welcome to the iRacing's virtual Circuit de la Sarre for coverage of the Le Mans 2.4 for the Major Series European Region Pro Split. I'm Justin Prince, along with me is Nicholas May, Christian Challenger, Sean Ambrose in the director's seat for today's action, with cameras provided by Dougie Beer throughout today's action. Today brought plenty of it, to say the very least, with Isaac Snyder coming away with the overall race victory over Handsome Pete. That difference 19.8 seconds. Dick Miller finished in third position. Udis Pateklis, Dawson Brock, Ryan Walker, the top six. Travis Henderson, Colin Martzoff, Claude Belval, and Bob Beltrami rounded out the top 10 overall and the HBD class. The rest of the HBDs, Tom Drelly, Raleigh Thompson, and Antur Sendez Galindo, all had issues this race, Nicholas.
Yeah, the GT1s, it was Tim Klassen's outplaying Dallas Pataska in the strategy at the end. Ross Banfield is going to round out the final step of the podium for the GT1s. Kurt Crum is going to come home in fourth place in the number 7. George Gruber drives his Corvette to a top 5 finish. Ryan Mayer and Cordell Cologne. The GT1's the only class without a DNF today.
Moving on to GT3, Sam Harper outwitted Eric Mickey on the strategy call and comes home with the win. David Baker had a really solid race, I think it's fair to say, but comes home in third, which is a good reward for that. Trevor Bobrovsky had his own issues and comes home in fourth. Joshua Wolf didn't really feature much at all today, comes home in fifth, and then unfortunately for David Malneritz, he was involved in a fairly large incident, I think it's fair to say, in the Porsche curves, and he comes home 13 laps down on the overall lead and 6th place in class.
It was intriguing to say the very least today. And Nick, your thoughts on how things played out today for these drivers, because we had strategy come into play, we had attrition come into play, we also had overall raw pace come into play. A lot came into play.
Yeah, and doesn't that just sum up the major series so well? It's not just the strategy, not just the pace. You got to be good at everything. I'm sure there were major setup differences that played a part here in the end. So it just shows you just how long these guys have to be dedicated to their machines, to their cars and their hardware, and to get everything just dialed in just perfectly. Because if not, you're going to find yourself a couple of tenths off and not winning like 3 of these drivers are coming home with trophies today.
Thoughts, Christian, on how this race played out?
Well, I was definitely interested to see the strategy, and obviously it was quite difficult for all classes to do the entire race on a single set of tires, and that was a challenge in itself. And it's an interesting race because of kind of how it works out in the time. For most of the cars here, it was kind of 3 stints and a bit, and that's a little bit unusual because obviously in normal endurance races you're used to doing kind of either a double or a triple. In some cases you do beyond that, like a quad stint or whatnot, but you know, it always kind of takes more out of you to do that. So having the race kind of be in that sort of that area where it was probably just a little bit longer than most people are normally used to driving for at this track in these cars was pretty interesting. And obviously we had a lot of good battles, actually. It was a bit of a shame that we had a couple of incidents early on in pretty much all the classes that kind of split everybody up just enough that it became a near pure strategy race after that. But it was still interesting to see. Obviously in GT3, it's a great job by Sam to make those tires last, and to just have the pace required to beat Eric was really, really impressive, and another good race by him. And kind of as I was saying midway through the race, it's really good to see those guys who I have kind of been around in the series a little bit now and consider them still to be sort of new drivers, but they're really, really impressive, and obviously now starting to pick up outright wins is really, really cool to see.
Indeed, it was impressive to see some of the drives and some of the adversity some of the competitors were able to overcome, and the others who unfortunately had the struggles play things out. But in the end, Isaac Snyder, relatively calm race for the most part, other than one incident trying to pass by the 69 machine, but still is able to come away with the overall race victory. Isaac, dominating pace today. How are you feeling?
Honestly, I'm over the moon about this. This is about a year anniversary for me being in the majors, and I was looking for a close race with Riley, but a few mistakes definitely put some space in between me and the rest of the field. But overall, I don't really know what to say. I'm just really excited. This is my first majors win, so woo.
Congratulations once again on the victory today. and how much work was put in for this race today to make sure you had this pace and had that consistency you showed all day?
Honestly, I didn't put much pace in or much practice in the last 2 weeks because last year preparing for the iRacing 24, I drove this car for about 80 plus hours of just track time. So when I came back this past week, it just all kind of fell back into place because the car hasn't really changed since then. So I drove it how I knew how to drive it, and I just did my best to keep it clean.
Now, the next round is one of the wildcard rounds, where it's the World Rallycross Norway, which will be over at Lankabanken, I should rather say, for rallycross action, for dirt racing. Your thoughts on going rallycross racing?
It's going to be difficult without having a round wheel.
That's actually a good point to think about. It's going to be interesting indeed. Anyone you want to thank for the run today?
Honestly, I just want to thank my sponsors, Lazy Rocket, Pitbox, and then I'd like to thank my parents for always being super supportive, and then Major's Garage for providing some great baseline setups. They were pretty good actually, and HyperX also for making great headphones. And yeah, thank you guys. And also you guys have a great broadcast.
Congratulations on the victory once again, Isaac. Isaac Snyder, your winner today here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. Overall, for the GT1s, it was Tim Claessens who took the checker flag, Nick Smeg with him.
It certainly was, but it wasn't too easy. Tim, it all came down to strategy there, didn't it?
Hey, good evening, guys. Well, I feel a bit dirty with this win because yes, strategy was a big part. Like I went for the no tire strategy at all during the race, so that did gain me, I think, 25 seconds or so overall. But Dallas did have some very unfortunate coming together with a couple of HPDs I saw in the replays. So yes, it did help a lot because it was going to be very tight in the end because we were 2 seconds apart. But it was a little bit easy at the end because of it.
Yeah, certainly that put a damper on the battle itself. But say that you have to run this race all over tomorrow. Do you still go with the no tire stop there for your run, or do you think you're maybe taking tires tomorrow?
Oh no, for sure. I think it was the right call in the end. If my first stint was a little bit cleaner as well, because I didn't have the bestest of first stints, I probably would have had a bigger gap at the end as well to not really have it to be that close. But I would do it again straight away because the tire wear was almost negligible, and you didn't really lose any grip with it. In fact, it seemed to even gain some top speed because the tires were smaller.
And this is going to be a big day for the championship as well. It's going to extend your points lead in the European Pro standings. You think that you can keep that up? Any big events you're looking forward to in the future? I know, like Justin just mentioned, we're going rallycross racing here soon.
Yeah, now I'm definitely going to get pulled out of my comfort zone there. This was a nice race to finish off this part of the season. Now there's going to be a little bit more difficult combinations for me as a GT driver. But yeah, like you say, this is another nice boost in the championship. Now the drop weeks and everything are coming into place, so it was very close. So I can pull a little bit farther ahead with this round.
It'll certainly be challenging for a lot of drivers. I'm sure it'll be fun to watch, though. Anyone you want to give a shout out to or say thank you to before we let you go?
Everyone from the team, of course, and the sponsors, TeamSpeak, TFR Labs, which provide us with our stats, and Charity Envision, which our teammate Josh is supporting. So thanks everyone for the support, and yeah, have a good night, guys.
Awesome. You too. That's Tim Claessens coming home with the GT1 victory today at Le Mans. Christian, you've got another class winner, it looks like, to talk to.
Sam, I kind of called it a little bit wrong because I honestly thought in the last pit stop you were going to get jumped ahead by Eric, but I guess I missed where Eric must have taken tires earlier on, and that's what cycled him behind. But it looked like you completed the entire race with a single set. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I watched the international race yesterday morning. Saw that the winner didn't take tires and second place did, and then thought, oh, I could do that. No, I got a bit lucky there. I saw Eric pulling away, and then I got my slow down, and I was down in fifth, I think. I got lucky with the TFR cars, doing that, crashing into each other. And then I was far enough behind Eric, I was able to save a load of fuel and then just watch what he did. And I thought, I'm not going to beat him on pace from this far back, so I'll do what he doesn't do. So if he didn't take tires, I was going to take tires. If he did, I wasn't going to take tires. And then that's just how I ended up shaking out. And then I think he got a slow down when he was chasing me down. Yeah, lucky, but I'll take it.
It definitely worked out, and I mean, I know that it's not exactly a trivial deal to get a single set of tires with a GT3 Cup to the end of a race, and especially not the end of a 2-hour and 25-minute race. So I got to say, great job on doing that, and obviously maintaining the pace required to win the race. And kind of throughout the broadcast, I was mentioning it a few times about how, to me, I see a lot of what I consider kind of new drivers to the series, such as yourself, who kind of come through, and now you're kind of challenging guys and beating guys who've kind of been in the series for a while, like people such as Joshua Wolf. I expected to feature at the front of that battle in the 911 Cup, and I mean, yourself and Eric were kind of the drivers who were going at it once Melneritz was unfortunately out of the race. So it was really cool to see that we got kind of new guys coming through and guys kind of moving up through the series and whatnot who are being very, very competitive. I mean, this is not your first win. So I just want to say congratulations on the improvement and being able to get up and challenge for wins in the pro split.
Yeah, thanks very much. After Sportsman last year, I thought, oh, it'll be great if I can get into pro and then just hang around the top 15 so I don't have to qualify and I just automatically get in the top split. I wasn't expecting it to go quite as well as this, but it was last year, it was Joe Homan racing me super hard every race, really made me up my game, buy a new wheel, and yeah, that helped a lot. Since then, it's even over this year, I feel like I was struggling. Well, Daytona was a bit unlucky because Eric used his teammate to help him round, but like the F3 race, I was not that quick on pace. I just got lucky with other people wrecking, and the Nürburgring race, I was miles off the top four in TCR. So, no, it's good. I thought the momentum was swinging away a bit. But I'm not expecting to win the championship, but I'll take a top 5 for my first time. That'll be all right.
Well, I'd say the very least it's been a solid effort so far. And I mean, if that's kind of how you feel, even though you're already picking up race wins and whatnot, I think that bodes well for the future. And speaking of that, the next round is Rallycross cars at Hell. Yeah. So how do you feel about that?
I've been practicing them since January, so... fingers crossed. I do like a bit of rallycross. Hell is tricky though, really, really tough track. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the top will be quite different to what we're used to seeing, with different people coming up because some will have more rallycross experience than others or whatever. So yeah, should be fun. But yeah, thanks to I think I forgot to tell with my paint to trade in paints, which was stupid. But thanks to Ian for the amazing paint. Thanks to my mum for giving birth to me. Thanks to my girlfriend Hayley for putting up with me doing this throughout the week. Thanks to my job for giving me a wee bit of time to do this. And yeah, and thanks to you guys for the great broadcast. And I do like watching them back. So yeah, well done on that.
Good stuff, man. And thank you for coming and chatting with us. And once again, congratulations on the race win.
Thanks very much.
Again, that's Sam Harper coming away with the victory in the Porsche Cup cars. I'd like to thank him, Tim Claessens, Isaac Snyder for taking the time to speak with us during post-race coverage. And on that note, want to get your take, Nick, on the next round because, again, wildcard round action, international region goes to the Chili Bowl, the World Cross, Rallycross Norway for the European, the Crandon World Cup for the American region. 3 different types of races. All on dirt, though, for the next round.
Yeah, and that's one that we've always seen them struggle with a lot of times. It's relatively new still compared to everything else in iRacing. Rallycross, I feel like a lot of these drivers are going to be a little bit more comfortable with. We've seen a lot of majors drivers struggle a lot in Chili Bowl racing, but it's called Wild Card for a reason, and I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Definitely tune in to them, because you never know what's going to happen in the majors, let alone the major series on dirt.
It's going to be very fun, to say the very least, to see what happens. But on that note, we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Virtual Circuit de la Sarthe. I'd also like to thank the Major Series, rather, for organizing this amazing series for the Le Mans 2.4. We'd also like to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for a broadcast listed on screen. With additional thanks to Girdle, who provides the wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, and Nick, Christian, and Sean. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help to support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storeandvy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to your YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button so you don't miss a notification bell, so you don't miss a moment here on Global Sim Racing Channel. The next race, as talked about, is going to be a wildcard round as we go to Lenkabanen for Rallycross action. That's Sunday, July the 11th. Coverage starts at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time. You catch that here on GSRC. And don't forget, the majors in its American region ends up hitting the track at Circuit de la Sarthe later on this evening. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.